Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lorebeards Roleplaying.
Hey, welcome. Hi.
We are ready just in time for you guys today. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I had an exciting water-based incident on my way into the studio today. Ha.
I mean, that's not good for electronics, as anybody knows.
Not usually. That was exciting. What's also exciting is our topic for today. Before we introduce that, why don't we introduce ourselves?
Absolutely. Go first.
Hi, I'm Vera. Vera Samilla. I am a online thing doer, a VTuber creature, and a writer for the Warhammer RPGs. I've written for the Old World, Age of Sigmar Swordbound, and especially Warhammer Fantasy 4th Edition.
I am Ross Watson. I am also an online thing doer. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that a lot.
Please.
I'm an online thing doer. I'm also a game designer and author. I've written like over 100 different role-playing game products, I think, at this point. Mostly for Savage Worlds, Star Wars: Age of the Empire, Torg Eternity, all the Warhammer 40k role-playing games, most with a couple of exceptions. And yeah, that's basically who I am.
Yeah, I think I'm nearing like a little over like maybe a dozen now. I'm getting there. My portfolio is building over time.
That's good because we want more people like you in the industry, frankly.
Shucks. It's been a cool ride. I got to go on a trip down memory lane for today though because we're talking about D&D, and as part of that, I fished out my 3.5 books that I poured over as a tiny child who could not play games.
I mean, 3.5 is a great edition of D&D. I enjoyed it a great deal. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's the first. It's the most historic. It's the biggest.
It is a big deal and represents a real shift in tabletop gaming that we're going to get into.
Oh well, yeah, it was a massive shift. Frankly, I mean, I wouldn't be here without it. Let's talk about that for sure.
Well, it's cute because it marks the shift from the tabletop games my dad played to the ones that I play, right? Because my loving father, Mr. Samilla, was a war gamer. He played Civil War reenactment games, and D&D marks the point where that became a whole other genre of game.
Yeah, well, it started out life as a war game called Chainmail, uh, out
Yeah.
in the wilds of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, in that area. No, sorry, Geneva, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Sorry, what am I thinking? I'm crazy. Yeah, it started out there with this product called Chainmail, which was a tabletop war game, and people were like, it's cool that I have like a unit of archers and a unit of fighters and a unit of wizards. What if I had like one guy that I was controlling? How about that?
Yeah, like as I recall, the genesis of the idea was that there was some like US Army like 19th century field manual that recommended like role playing exercises for commanders who were in training. And they decided to apply this to one of these war game scenarios and have their generals do things and make decisions in character, which led to two of the players requesting a duel with one another to settle their honor. And there were no rules for this, and it ruined the entire game because for the next several hours, these guys role played out their dueling scenario and all of this stuff. And they thought, well, this was a terrible war, but a really fun night.
If you guys are really interested in the history of Dungeons and Dragons and how it came to be, we're not going to be able to cover all of that in 3 hours. But I will point you to one of my favorite books is Slaying the Dragon, which is by Ben Riggs. It's a secret history of Dungeons and Dragons. And there's also The Game Wizards by John Peterson and Of Dice and Men by David Ewaltz. And lastly, we have our very own in the industry historian, Shannon Appelkline, who does Designers and Dragons. And I would definitely recommend that one to check out as well. Because,
Ooh.
yeah, he covers not only D&D, but like the history of White Wolf by itself is fascinating. So you need to read that one if you're all curious.
Oh, we got a super chat from Elemental Exposure. Thank you so much. two things. One, missing the fourth wall for Street for Family BS hurt you out. Oh, no need to apologize. It was a lot of fun though. As a fourth wall denizen, I had a special little stream for April 4th, the fourth day of the fourth month after the first fourth of the year is through. Which was a lot of fun. And second, please, Professor Vera, teach some phonics to Ross.
Phonics.
Are we saying Ghoulie Man? Ross?
I mean, look, man, if there's an official pronunciation guide, I'll stick to that for sure. I'm just going with what sounds right to me. And keep in mind, I've spoken to these guys like directly numerous times. So if I'm wrong, I felt like they would have corrected me, but you know, it's fine.
Well, like I'll tell you this. I think I've picked up a few new like Azrai pronunciations since I've started talking to Andy more. I don't have like the Welsh structures of the lexicon. I did a little linguistics in college though. If we had like IPA pronunciations for these characters, I could read them. It could be a fun time to talk about like fantasy language sourcing at some point. Really, like we'd go into like Elric and Melnivene, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, I believe, because influential. But it's easy for like Kozilid, right? Because that's very orthodox. You got to infer it gets a little funnier with certain compound vowels and so on. So,
oh yeah, as a kid, ha. Big fan.
So thank you so much, Elemental. And no worries, there's more cool stuff ahead. I showed off some like new design stuff upcoming. Did a little bit of an impromptu AMA thing, and I think it was my first like just chatting stream that was 6 hours long in a long little while.
That's super cool. So fun fact, there is official pronunciations for Dungeons and Dragons stuff. I used to work with a guy called Ed Stark. He was head of R&D on 3rd edition and 3.5. He worked on a lot of stuff for 2nd edition, especially Birthright, which is one of my favorite settings.
Later honored in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And Ed and I, we worked together for a while, and he would tell me, like, here's the official pronunciation of certain things, like Katoblapas or Ixixkchitl, for example. Sahwagan. Yeah, Sahwagan. I always like that one.
I would never have thought that was Sahwagan. That's shocking to me.
Well, like again, you know, this is from an earlier. This is pre Hasbro purchase era, so they may have decided on different official pronunciations, but back then, certainly.
Yes, the Elemental. Thank you so much again, and more cool event things to come. Thank you for thinking of me. I appreciate it.
Necroplayer 97 says, "What are your favorite expansions to D&D?"
Necro, thank you so much for the super chat. Ooh, I have one of them here. I have my Player's Handbook 2 from 3.5.
Yeah, like what? I mean, what do you mean when you say expansion? Like, what do you mean? Do you mean like a setting? Do you mean like a book? Do you mean like a video game or a table or a board game? Like, I'm not sure.
It is expansive, right? I'm
going to choose to believe he's talking about settings, and I'm going to say Planescape and Birthright are my two favorite.
Ooh, Planescape's cool. Planescape's cool.
It was so just that the Tony DiTerlizzi art and the work that went into like building the slang that they use in Sigil, and it was so fantastic. To this day, what a great setting.
Yeah, that's up there. I quite like the Forgotten Realms. I think they're neat. I know that Ross too is a fan. Greyhawk is pretty cool. Not really an expansion. That's sort of as OG as it gets. But...
Well, okay. So fun fact: Greyhawk is almost the ultimate OG, but the actual ultimate OG is Blackmoor, which is Arnis setting. For setting wise, but certainly Greyhawk got developed more than Blackmoor ever did, for various reasons.
Was Greyhawk not the first published like properly through TSR?
I think so. Like I'd have to.
It doesn't make it first.
No. I think I think technically speaking, it's actually the known world, Mystara, because I think that was where Keep on the Borderlands and stuff were eventually set. Was that I think I'm not entirely certain about that, but I believe that's what's true.
Well, like reading through the proper like first edition Dungeons and Dragons stuff is a riot, because like they refer to the desert because bandits are from the desert. And that's part of your setting now is the desert.
Oh, and first edition is that's the wooden box, right? That's the white.
Yeah, the white box is the OG.
Yeah. That's honestly, that's the only edition I've never played, and it is. Talk about basic. It's very, very basic, obviously, but foundational.
It's so cute. There's a whole section for determining which of your character's family members receives their inheritance.
That is actually kind of a cool detail that I really like.
No, it's great. There's like Jack Kirby. We're going to get into this in a minute. There's like Jack Kirby art in there mixed with like cartoonish like caricatures. It's adorable.
Oh yeah, well the art, I mean, we could do a whole episode on just the art of D&D, frankly. We could talk about Errol Otis, and we could talk about Dave Trampier, we could talk about Larry Elmore, we could talk about Clyde Caldwell, we could talk about Jeff Easley, we could talk about like just Jeff D. Tons and tons of artists and the way that their art has influenced things and gone on to do other stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, like I'm picking up my 3.5 manuals. They are beautiful books, man. Like just takes me back. I got all my little bookmarks in them too from the era when I wanted to play so bad, and it'll be notes ready just in case. It never happened. Baby Vera would be very proud of me.
Tom Wham is the guy who did a lot of those little cartoony illustrations in the advanced D&D books, and I think maybe possibly the white box as well. And those are some of my favorite little sketches. And it's so wild because the tone of D&D comes across more from the writing than the art, because the art is clearly unserious. It's clearly a cartoon, but the like Appendix N, which is a very famous section of D&D where they talk about their literary influences, is all like serious sword and sorcery. 3 Hearts and 3 Lions from Paul Anderson, and Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, of course, Conan, etc. Anyway, we just go on and on and on.
Oh, we're gonna. This is gonna be a going on and on day.
Yay! Those are my favorites. Watchdog 3079. You want to read this one?
Yeah, what would a D&D based war game look like done well to you? I brought this up just the other day because part of the problem that I think Wizards has with D&D as an IP is that there is no way to sell models, not en masse. There is no war game. They don't have the ability to sell kits and things. So I think that Wizards of the Coast would be quite stoked to have a D&D based war game of their own, which would also represent kind of a return to form or reversal, because of course Dungeons and Dragons spawned from wargaming and was like, hey, what if we made a single character instead? Because prior to like the work they were doing over at TSR, there were not like single character sheets. There were unit sheets. There were stats for groupings of units. So
yeah, a lot of those. Go ahead.
This is an interesting full circle kind of consideration.
Well, Watchdog, I can tell you they tried several times. They tried with Battle System back in the 80s. They tried it in the early 2000s with the new version of Chainmail. Believe it or not, the Dark Sun setting started out as a war game setting. Like that was going to be what they were going to do for a war game.
That kind of makes sense with the blighted landscape, all the ominous creatures, the mantises. Rah, rah.
And fun fact, there is a war game that's currently exists that is based on D&D, and that is War Machine and Hordes, or Warmahordes as the kids call it. Both of those products were based on, they were created from a company called Privateer Press. Privateer Press began the Iron Kingdoms, which is the setting for both of those games, with a series of D&D books, including one of the best bestiaries ever published, the Monsternomicon. It's so good. Damn good for a 26-year-old book. 26-year-old book. Yeah, so technically Warmahordes is a D&D based war game. Yeah, I don't know, like D&D is so individual. Like I can't see anything bigger than like a skirmish scale, maybe.
I was thinking the same. It would need to have personality. It would need to have narrative.
Kind of like a Mordheim or a Necromunda, or
very much so, with room for like painting #your guys.
Yeah. But good question, and it got me to, it's fun to talk about Warmahordes every so often. So there you go.
Yeah, I had someone musing the other day in my chat about whether or not it makes sense for D&D to acquire some more like Hero Forge for the sake of producing creatures. And people to make their own models for their games through something in-house at Wizards.
Volcano says, "Wait, the Nostronomicon was a war game precursor?" Yeah, it's an Iron Kingdoms book, Nostronomicon. Oh, we got this one, Walking Tree 42. He says, "Hey guys, do you know of a system that covers prehistoric sci-fi setting in the style of Terra Nova, Primeval, or Jurassic Park?" Wow, I don't off the top of my head. It's interesting.
Prehistoric sci-fi, like so you're talking like gene-edited dinosaurs and the like, right?
I mean, I'm thinking more like this is a really deep cut, but like Herculoids, I think is maybe where he's going. I don't know. Like Primeval is a certain thing. Cadillacs of dinosaurs, maybe.
You can kind of run this in Galarian. Like you've got dino jungles, you've got aliens and whatnot. You can collide them, but Galarian has everything. It's like that's as much of a cop out as GURPS, right?
I'll be honest. I will defend Galarian. I think Galarian is a good setting. I don't think it's an amazing setting. Like I wouldn't point it out as like this is the pinnacle of world building. But it's really good, and especially in small chunks. Like if you focus on a particular region, you can get a lot out of it. Predation in the Cipher system, according to the internet, is a time travel thing where they go to the Cretaceous era, so maybe check that out. And there's a Morkborg style game called Raptor Ruckus. That's what the internet tells me, so that's the best I can do for you, Walking Tree. I'm sorry.
Raptor Ruckus.
I know, right? Great name.
I kind of love it. Love it.
Very Jurassic Park themed, according to the internet.
I play Raptor Ruckus.
And would you like to read this one?
Yeah, Necro asks, also as 2 writers for the Grimdark setting, any opinions on D&D's Grimdark settings, Ravenloft and Dark Sun?
Oh, please go ahead, please.
I mean, I like Dark Sun, like I said. I like the idea of like a blighted landscape. I like psionics. I'm interested in them. I think there's something kind of morbid about that inherently. I find psychic powers like very creepy. Like my Inquisitor is a telepath because I think it's so invasive and kind of disturbing conceptually. That's part of why I feel that 40K is like more of this oppressive and truly grim atmosphere, because the powers there are like so mind destroying inherently. Like the magic can be kind of fun and nice in fantasy. It shouldn't be in many cases, but the elves do it in ways that are quite elegant and clean. There are manifestations of the winds that are like mostly safe and sort of well aspected. Psychers in 40K are always bad. And I think that nature of psionic power is something you can really thread into a setting to make it quite grim. There's just this incisive kind of feel to it. I'm terrified of bugs also, so Dark Sun really does it for me there.
I mean, that'll do it.
I think that well, do you want to go on also?
Okay, so fun fact, I worked for Tim Brown, who is the designer of Dark Sun for a number of years. So I got the inside scoop on Dark Sun.
Please.
Because we talked about it a lot. And Dark Sun is a very cool, grim, dark fantasy setting. It has been handled, I would say, less than great after 2nd edition. There was a very infamous 4th edition free RPG Day product that was very much not Dark Sun, but was marketed as Dark Sun. But the key elements of Dark Sun, of course, is the way that magic actually harms the environment. It drains the world of energy. So you're actively making the world worse by using magic. And then secondly, it's the everybody has psionic powers. And then, thirdly, there's these dragon kings that rule over everything. And they're not good. They're not good, guys. They're not good. So yeah, Dark Sun is very grim dark through the lens of sword and sandals. It's maybe a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because like magic being just like overtly bad is very much a thing in Conan and that whole sphere of storytelling. Like the wizard is the enemy.
And I always liked when Tim would say, technically speaking, that the divine spells, like the powers from the gods, if you're a cleric or whatever, those don't harm the environment. But then you have to wonder, like, is the god really that benevolent? It opens up a lot of questions for that. And there were the cannibal halflings were also one of my favorite parts of that setting. They made halflings quite scary, little bastards, which I liked. Ravenloft's gone through a lot of evolutions.
Yeah, Ravenloft is interesting.
So originally started as a adventure about a vampire by the creators of Dragonlance, Tracy and Laura Hickman, and one of the creators of Dragonlance. And it was a very popular module because it was one of the first that veered off from just strictly being a dungeon crawl and involved a lot more story and role playing elements in it. And that was pretty cool at the time. And then in Advanced Dungeons Dragons, a second edition, they expanded Ravenloft to turn it into a whole setting, which was this place in the mists. It was very horror focused, and it had all these dark lords that were trapped there, but had ultimate control over their realms. If you were a D&D player back in the 90s, you would often hear people talking about, well, so-and-so is going to break out of Ravenloft, or I wonder what so-and-so would be like in Ravenloft. Lord Soth being one of the characters from Dragonlance that went into Ravenloft and then escaped, was because he's just that awesome, for example. I really, really liked that second edition horror theme park version of Ravenloft. It was so cool. And to this day, I still have like ideas of like what I want to do with it. And some of the supplements for it were just so cool. There was a little realm that was basically just like a little mansion, and the Dark Lord was a intelligent sword that had been previously wielded by a paladin that had turned evil. And it was so cool. It's just such a great concept.
At some point it got taken over by White Wolf, right?
Yeah. Well, they licensed it to White Wolf. And then starting in, I want to say third edition, I think it was fourth edition. They made Ravenloft like just a subset of the Plane of Shadow, and it became less cool. And then fifth edition was like, it's really just Barovia. It's really just Strahd. And I was like, okay, that's fine, because that was what it started out as, was just Barovia and Strahd. But I would love to see more,
Yeah, like as much as I like the Plane of Shadows, and as much as I like Strahd, it's kind of fun to have these Dark Lords with their own domains. Like it suggests something cool. There's like this the sort of isolated pocket universe nature of it is intriguing to me.
I've got this idea that I desperately want to do. I know Alexis would be really into it because it's an island with like dinosaurs. It's like kind of like Skull Island, It's like
yeah.
And the Dark Lord is this like evil version of Tarzan who has, there's like even a Greystoke Manor, and he like hosts you when you show up to the island. He like, come enjoy my hospitality for the evening. And in the morning, he sets you free because he's going to hunt you through the rest of the island. He's going to hunt you to death. It's the most dangerous game. And I'm like, I really want to write that. I would love to make that something cool. God, we got like a lot of super chats today. Go ahead. Sorry, what were you saying?
I dig. I like the most dangerous game. Remember, I'm an Anathema enjoyer, so.
Yep. Want to read this one?
Sure. Arrow Mob, thank you so much. Arrow Mob asks, what's the spellcaster equivalent of a vibe coder in various settings? We got any spell swap and a mage brain rot. Well, in Warhammer, in fantasy at least, what you have there is a witch who is sort of letting the magic speak for them, because the magic does have a bit of a will of its own, and Dar is sort of infused with Tzeentch, who will vibe with you if you let him. So there's realm for that, and then I don't know if the literal brain rot can result. You can wind up kind of funny.
So, okay, this is a bit of a deeper cut, but for me, like if I was going to do something like this, I would actually turn to the Sons of Ether from the Mage role-playing game from White Wolf back in the 90s. Because the Sons of Ether were very pulp-coated, but also very, very... it was a lot about your personality and your outlook on the world. Like you could, if you wanted to, you could just sail your steamship to Jupiter and back, because Sons of Ether could make the weirdest, craziest stuff. And I mean, you could literally be a wizard whose magic wand is a Nintendo Power Glove if you really wanted to. So I think yeah, Sons of Ether might be where I would go with that.
Yeah, Mage is interesting. There's a lot of stuff like that, right? It's very flexible as a system.
You know, you could take an approach to this with something a little more modern, like a meta mage whose spells are submitting a prompt to the magic, which is like an AI that then generates the spell.
Grok, fireball this guy.
Right? I don't know about that. I'm not sure how that would work, but yeah, that's a thought. You'd be some kind of technomancer at that point, probably. Which is closer to a vibe coder in any case.
Can you imagine how terrifying a netrunner that just uses Grok would be?
Oh, so fun fact, if you're a fan of Cyberpunk 2077 and or the Edge Runners anime, one of the characters from Edge Runners, the netrunner Lucy, is in Guilty Gear now.
Yeah.
And she uses abilities in the fighting game that are like hacking. It's really neat. So that would be another place to look.
I have been meaning to learn her. I have been enthused about Strive's 2.0 update. They got rid of Wild Assault, a mechanic I never learned. So I'm validated in my choice to never learn or use it. So...
Oh, I am so excited that you are into Guilty Gear, because now you can tell me all about it. I know nothing about it, except that it's a fighting game.
Have you heard of the backyard, Ross?
Oh my gosh. This is really cool though. I'm excited. I want to learn more about this from you.
I'm excited also.
Elemental Exposure. Apologies to Ross if my last super chat was too cringe. No, buddy, it's not. It's going to be hard to out cringe me. I'm going to be honest. Q for you two. Question for you two. What is the best PC creation way for someone just starting Warhammer roleplay or D&D as a much too old late bloomer? Never played tabletop role-playing games when younger. Well, for Dungeons & Dragons, I would recommend looking at D&D Beyond. You can have a free account there pretty easily, and they have a character builder that has a lot of like simple steps, or even just can create a character for you. And D&D is going to be a little simpler, I think, than Warhammer roleplay, just because there's a fewer random rolls involved. Although sometimes I have people that are just all into random rolls, and they say that Warhammer's randomness is really the point. So there you go.
I would say the best way is to like follow your heart. Like, again, I'm not like deep into the random rolls. I would say that there is no place like a tabletop RPG to be a little self-indulgent, to play the kind of character that you want to really inhabit and invest in. I think that having more setting knowledge will help you a lot. Having a little more mechanical knowledge. I would do some pre-reading. I would learn how the game works a little bit, like what kinds of aesthetics you can evoke. But I would start with like the kind of person you really want to play. Like, what's going to be fun to get into character with? Do you want to be boisterous? Do you want to be kind of sly? Do you want to be cute? Like, what kind of energy do you want to bring forward at the table? Start there and find ways to evoke that. If you randomly roll, maybe like consider how that can play into that personality. But you want to like find a space that'll be fun, that'll be exciting for you. And like that, I think, should be the heart of any character you play, especially as a new character or a new player.
Vera has said it's far better than I could have. That's follow her advice, not mine, or this way. Follow her advice. Yeah, she's got a really good handle on making a character you're going to want to play, as opposed to like the mechanical tools.
The mechanical tools are important because like that makes it enjoyable long term to play a character. Right? You don't want to like play a character you love the vibe of, but like sucks to pilot. But it's nice to marry these, I think.
Thank you so much, Elemental Exposure. And I should point out to everybody here that super chats are the best way to support the channel, support the show, keep us producing more content for you. We are very grateful to each and every one of you guys that puts one out.
Thank you guys so much. And Elemental, I wish you the best of luck if you are getting into playing tabletop games very soon. I think they're a amazing thing to do. I really, I'm super stoked to hear that you're eyeing some character creation seriously.
You know, we had a whole episode on like the influences of RPGs, but it always struck me that role-playing games are like one of the safest ways to have fun. Like seriously, like there's very little threat of any actual harm at a Dungeons and Dragons table. And especially for people who just want to socialize with their buddies and have a good time. I mean, it beats almost any other activity I could think of as far as being like A, fun, B, safe, and C, enjoyable.
Oh, so. It's so great. It's like it's a creative pursuit. It's collaborative. It's nice. And like even if you decide like, hey, I don't like the vibe of this, at a good table, you could just fudge that. You can often rebuild a character a few sessions in and just move on with it. Like this is the advantage to making your own fun. You can make it fun. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned this in our How to Be a Good DM episode, but allow people to re-roll their characters. It literally costs you nothing. It's so easy to just let somebody rebuild the character because they picked something they didn't enjoy. It's frankly a rule I take so much for granted I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, like I think we kind of got into that with like this make sure everyone's having fun kind of thing. Is it costs you nothing to do and it's easy to work around and makes the vibe good.
The Exiled One. You want to read this one?
Yeah, thank you so much for 4 months of membership. 4 is my lucky number, you know. So, what do you think about TPKs? Oh boy. Ooh.
We probably could do an entire episode on TPKs.
Ross, in short, what do you think about TPKs, total party kills?
I feel like I've talked about this before a little bit, so you guys are gonna have to tell me if I'm repeating myself, but I like the risk of it. I like that it is something that can happen. And I kind of tend to prefer games where it is a possibility. As a GM like myself, like I'm almost always the DM for my group, and I don't really hold back when I, pull out monsters and make combat encounters and things like that. It's not like I'm trying to make it easy on them. And so I guess my personal opinion, this is to be clear, there's no one right way of any of these things we're talking about. There's no one true way. But for me, like what I like to do is I like to challenge my players, and I like that it is a potential consequence. Do I try to make it happen? No. Do I go out of my way to make it happen? Absolutely not, because it is not fun. TPKs are, and I should be really clear about this. TPKs are a buzzkill. They do drop the energy at the table. Everybody feels a little like, oh crap, we screwed up. There's a lot of that's going to happen. But
well, you're in mourning suddenly, right? Like,
yeah, it literally can be a grieving process. but again, I think it's important because the element of risk makes the successes and achievements you do get as a player that much more meaningful. So
yeah, I would say that my ideal is that a TPK is not possible without making at least 2 mistakes in a row. I think that other than certain very dramatic and obvious circumstances, it should require a lack of forethought or caution to wander into one. That said, I think that a TPK can in fact be a satisfying resolution to a story under some circumstances. There are positions where that is a really clean ending to a game. Oftentimes you'll have situations in a tabletop game where the party knows they're getting into the shit, and if things escalate, it is possible to make no mistakes and still lose.
Captain Picard.
Correct. And that can be a satisfying ending. I would say, though, if that's how things are looking, it is often positive for the narrative to find a way to have that TPK carry a little bit of meaning, because people would prefer a Pyrrhic victory over a candle being snuffed in the dark many times. It depends on the tone of your game, but if you're running a kind of heroic style of play, giving them some way to leave a scar, to impact the narrative as the party goes down can be more satisfying than having them all like fade out and flicker away in some dark cave, right? It depends on what's happening. It can be thematic if they rush in, make a lot of bad decisions, and die messily and thoroughly unheroically. But it depends on your style of play. It depends on your group. And there are some groups who I would say you should not TPK. I try and encourage the students at the D&D club at the school to not kill all of their friends because they've been naughty on that day. That this is like bad for the vibe. So
right. And to be clear, we're talking about killing player characters, not players.
Yeah, we definitely have like a no killing your players rule. Even just tempting sometimes.
I sincerely believe that we should talk about TPKs soon as a topic, because there's a lot of ways to there's a lot of stuff to discuss, like how it happens, why it happens, should it happen, and what you do after, because there's in D&D especially, there's a lot of ways to return from the dead. So it's not necessarily the end of your game per se.
Yeah, and I would agree with this, Ian, here, that you should probably communicate to your group the relative danger level of the game. You can always overstate this. It's never a problem to say that people, this is going to be a really dangerous game. Your characters can die. It's going to be rough in some places. To add tension, you don't have to follow through on that little life hack. You can pretend things are more ominous than they really are and balance down. You can't do the opposite.
That's true.
If you tell your players, hey, this is going to be kind of a chill game, you can like try stuff, do whatever, it'll be kind of silly, kind of goofy, and then you send like Grunthar the Skullcracker, who is a fully optimized creature, like multiple tiers above them, to just like break them in half, that's going to be a vibe killer. No one will have fun.
I mean, again, we have to do a whole episode on this, because sometimes TPKs are accidental. I mean, it's
Yes.
Certainly I've done it accidentally a couple times, and I know other game masters I've played with have done it accidentally a couple times.
Yes, like the ideal is for it to not be possible without a few mistakes, but the mistakes could be on anyone's part of the table.
Right? And sometimes the dice just want to screw you over.
Yeah.
So it's possible. Guys, thank you so much for all these super chats. You're doing great today. Really appreciate it. Watchdog 3079, he asks, are you familiar with Neon Odyssey from Avantris Entertainment? It is a banger sci-fi setting. It is a D&D reskin while being its own natural creation.
This is recent, right? Like this is like relatively not long ago. I've heard of this.
Well, you're ahead of me. I have not heard of it. It's a Kickstarter, apparently. Well, it was a Kickstarter, I guess. The Kickstarter's now over. It looks really nice, though. The artwork's really very colorful, very anime cartoony. I like it. It kind of reminds me of that Relic Knights kind of look. So that's neat.
I am a neon enjoyer. I am a space opera enjoyer.
Synthwave space fantasy. Oh, you had me at synthwave. Damn, I'm gonna have to get a copy of this.
Ross and I discovering more unified musical tastes.
Love it. So to get back to D&D, I'm gonna make a bold statement. I'm gonna make a controversial statement.
Please, let's be controversial.
Yeah. Well, I have put a lot of thought into this, and I've read a lot of books about the origins of D&D, and so I feel like this is a fairly informed opinion. And I've even spoken to guys that were in like Rob Kuntz, that were in their orbit of Arneson Gygax. But my opinion is this: Dave Arneson invented the form of the tabletop RPG in practice. He ran campaigns that felt like what we would know as modern D&D. Gary Gygax, in turn, he wrote it down. He sold it. He built the whole culture and the industry around it. While they both deserve credit for creating Dungeons & Dragons, I believe that Gygax is the true father of the tabletop role-playing hobby as we know it today.
Yeah, like, there's been arguments about this, obviously. I feel like Gary Gygax is a controversial figure in some ways.
He is, unquestionably.
There's a philosophy that I'm quite fond of, which is that as soon as you write it down, it's science. But you have to write it down, because, like, I would wager that for thousands of years, people have, like, played pretend. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What makes it the hobby of a tabletop role-playing game is to codify your character, to make it possible to pick up and resume, to systemize things in a way that is functional, Yeah.
So, I mean, Gygax is a very polarizing figure because he was, in the early days of D&D, he was the stern patriarch. He was like, this is how the game is played. You must play it this way. Any way outside of that is not okay. Right. And then after he got ousted from TSR during an event called the Night of Long Knives, which I will briefly talk about in a little bit. But after his ouster from TSR, he kind of mellowed out a lot. And in the last, I would say, 2 decades of his life, he was actually more like a elder statesman who was constantly promoting the hobby and talking about all the benefits of the hobby and things like that. And not for nothing, he went on 60 Minutes to defend it from the Satanic Panic in person. So Gary he's a complicated figure. He's a bit like Stan Lee, who is a complicated figure in comics, like who, not only screwed over Jack Kirby, but also created like a ton of characters that we love. So, and at different points in his life, he was, a different guy, just like Gary Gygax at different points in his life was a different guy. But yeah, Gygax is, he's a bit of a polarizing figure, and he was the guy out in front telling everybody about Dungeons & Dragons, while Arneson was, I mean, I hate to say this, but Arneson just kind of screwed around. They gave Arneson so many opportunities to write something, to create something for D&D. He was on staff at TSR for years, and he just never produced anything. He couldn't. He seemed incapable, and I don't mean to judge this guy. I didn't know him personally or anything like that. I'm not trying to diminish his character, but my research on the guy tells me that he had many, many chances to create things of his own and just couldn't somehow get there. Like he had a lot of notes and bullet points, but he could never assemble it into an adventure or a setting. Other people kind of had to do that for him. So.
Yeah, and like I say this with the benefit of somebody that's inherited the legacy of D&D, the legacy of like tabletop games as a genre, as like a movement. it doesn't seem like it would have been that hard to write for like the TSR books. It's pretty friggin' loose, man. There's not a lot of structure you have to worry about. Like there's a lot that goes into formatting, into balance, into careful consideration when writing for an established setting these days, right? We've got style guides, we got all these things to work with. The fighting men or fighters or fightmen or whatever you call them in the OG D&D did all sorts of things. They did battle, they hung out, they had inheritances. None of this was like super orthodox. All you needed was like to sit down and compose stuff, and I think it would have flown.
Well, if you're okay, I will briefly cover some of the more interesting aspects of the 70s and the creation of D&D.
Oh, let's go.
All right, so D&D did not spring fully formed from Gygax's imagination or even Arneson's imagination. It evolved from Chainmail. Chainmail is a game that was co-written by Gary Gygax with a guy called Jeff Pernin, and this is 1970, 1971, to simulate medieval combat. Now, it's well known that Gygax liked to put his name on things, even though his involvement necessarily wasn't always much more than maybe being the guy that put it together in a little mimeographed packet and sold it. So, but that having been said, it does seem like he had some input, that it is not just an honorary, like Gygax also worked on this game with Jeff Perrin. The fantasy supplement at the back of Chainmail gave rules for magic swords and spells and monsters. And this inspired Dave Arneson to adapt them into his own homebrew game, which he then, I believe it was called, there's a name for it, but that it eventually evolved into Blackmoor, which focused on individual characters rather than entire armies. And Arneson drove from Minneapolis to Lake Geneva in 73 to run a Blackmoor campaign for Gygax. And that single game night convinced both these guys that they had something. They had something magical, something really worth publishing. And Arneson is the guy, believe it or not, who came up with the idea of a dungeon master. And the original description of the dungeon master is that of a sadistic referee, which I think is hilarious.
That's the best kind of referee.
Before it was called Dungeons & Dragons, it was simply called the Fantasy Game. Gary Gygax was apparently undecided on a final name. And he had a list of options that he gave out to his players, including famously his very young daughter, Cindy.
Yeah, his 2-year-old.
Yes, his 2-year-old. And she said, "Daddy, I like Dungeons & Dragons best." So a toddler's enthusiasm locked in a name that would define an entire genre of entertainment. Some versions of the story credit Gygax's then wife, Mary Jo, but the more colorful toddler version remains the most widely circulated. Of course, Gygax he didn't invent the game from a position of comfort. He'd lost his job as an insurance underwriter in Chicago. He moved his family to Lake Geneva, and there he worked as a part-time shoe cobbler to make ends meet. So his financial situation was so desperate, his children had to put cardboard insoles in their shoes instead of buying new pairs. In his spare time, this is where he developed Chainmail, because he was really into the wargaming community in Lake Geneva. And the small fantasy supplement tacked on at the back was basically an afterthought. It was a 12-page, it was basically 12 pages of wizards, dragons, and monsters, and that was the seed for what would become Dungeons & Dragons. Naturally, his first playtesters were his very own children. His 11-year-old son, Ernie, and his 9-year-old daughter, Elise, were the first players. He built a dungeon called Castle Greyhawk for the very first game, which is, of course, where we get Greyhawk, the setting. And his son, Ernie, played a wizard he called Tensor, which is an anagram of Ernest. And Elise played a cleric called Alyssa. It's weird that his son gets a name, but Alyssa doesn't. I don't know why. And apparently the session ran until 9 p.m. at night when Gygax was like, "Okay, you guys have to go to bed. We have to stop this." And then he returned to the office and designed another dungeon level because he's like, "I have something. This is working." And when they first published it in 1974, it consisted of 3 slim booklets stuffed into a wood grain colored cardboard box. And the company was ran out of his basement. It had a very small it had a marketing budget of exactly $0. And no established publisher had been willing to take on the game. I mean, he tried. He tried to sell it to Avalon Hill. He tried to sell it, which was Avalon Hill at the time in the 70s was like the biggest, outside of, let's say, Parker Brothers, was the biggest war game / board game publisher. And Gygax founded TSR specifically because no one else would publish D&D.
Why do you think that was?
It was
a publisher.
Because it's a game you can't explain. You can't just write a marketing blurb and expect people to figure it out. It's a game you kind of had to experience. And I credit Critical Role with really opening it up and allowing people to kind of say, okay, this is what it is. Because before, I mean, I tried for decades to explain D&D to people who they'd be like, yeah, I don't get it. You know?
Yeah, because like in the nicest way, when you approach an adult and tell them, what I want you to do with me on Saturday night is we're going to pretend to be little gnomes and we're going to cast magic spells.
Right. Right. And the Satanic Panic in the 80s did not help with it. It did. So the Satanic Panic was a double-edged sword. It helped in that it pushed the name of the game to the forefront of popular culture. Everybody after the Satanic Panic, like most people in America knew that it existed and they knew a little bit about it, even if they didn't know exactly what it was. But trying to explain it to someone who that was their only exposure was the Satanic Panic was awkward at best. I lost count of the times people would come up to me and try to, save my soul. In the deep South, that's where I was when I was a kid. So a lot of like, this is evil. This is not Christian. I'm like, I'm just playing the game, bro. Leave me alone. Tolkien sued D&D. The Tolkien
really?
estate. Yeah. One of the earliest editions of D&D, you could be a hobbit, you could fight Balrogs, and you could encounter Ents.
Yeah, they should have sued.
So
that makes sense.
Gygax at first denied that Tolkien had influenced the game at all, which, I mean, that's obviously false on its face. Players immediately recognized all the borrowed names and all the borrowed creatures. In 1977, lawyers representing the firm that had licensed Tolkien's IP, they sent TSR a cease and desist letter demanding the removal of dragon, dwarf, ent, goblin, hobbit, orc, Balrog, and warg from the game.
They got a couple of those.
They did. They got ent, hobbit, and Balrog. It was successfully argued in court that most of these words were in the public domain, but 3, the ones I just mentioned, were not. As a result, hobbits became halflings, ents became treants, which is legally distinct at best. And Balrogs were removed entirely. I mean, arguably replaced by the Pit Fiend and or the Baelor. Gygax, of course, later on was forced to admit that Tolkien had a strong impact on D&D's development, which contradicted his earlier remarks.
Yeah, I think that it was like really just Tolkien and Moorcock that influenced it, because Moorcock and the alignment system had a lot to do with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Michael Moorcock, of course, famously influenced Warhammer to a great extent, of course.
Oh, yeah. Everyone take a shot.
Yeah. Chat loves it when I bring up Michael Moorcock in relation to Games Workshop or D&D. So, Elric of Melnimene, by the way, is a great character, really interesting dude, and he is literally meant to be the anti-Conan. In case you didn't know that, Elric is gave up a kingdom instead of trying to gain a kingdom. He uses magic instead of being opposed to magic. He's weak and sickly. He's
depressed. He's sad.
Yeah. But he's a great character. It's so weird how somebody can look at Conan and say, I'm going to make something the exact opposite of that, and it's still a great, awesome sword and sorcery character. So
extremes are interesting. Like Elric's whole thing is he has no interest in competition. He is willing to endanger people he loves. He's got this fatalistic and grim aspect. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Then there's the Night of Long Knives, which I promised I was going to talk about. One of the most dramatic chapters in D&D's history. It's the story of how Gygax, co-creator of the game, founder of TSR, and the most famous person in tabletop role-playing games, he was ousted from his own company in a boardroom coup that he never saw coming. By the early 80s, TSR was a cultural juggernaut. It was hemorrhaging money, however. Gygax had moved to Hollywood to try and get a D&D movie and TV show produced. Lots of cocaine was involved. There was a mansion. Apparently, Gygax's mansion was like home to Playboy bunnies and all kinds of like actors and famous people were just showing up like crazy to go hang out and party with Gygax because he had a lot of money to burn. And Gygax, having been a extremely poor cobbler, was like, "Woo, I'm in Hollywood, let the good times roll." So TSR was $1.5 million in debt. To stabilize the company, Gygax hired a manager called Lorraine Williams, whose family held the copyright to Buck Rogers. Lorraine Williams is possibly one of the most infamous people in the history of Dungeons & Dragons. She's widely disliked for a number of reasons. And she was the sister of a guy called Flint Dille. Flint Dille was a writer in Hollywood. He did if you liked G.I. Joe the cartoon, Flint Dille wrote a whole bunch of episodes of that, for example. And Flint Dille was really into D&D, and he went to Gary Gygax's parties, and he met Gygax, and Gygax told him, I need like a business manager because we're losing a lot of money. And Flint was like, hey, my sister, she's got a business degree. And Gygax says she's hired. The problem was that his partners, the Blooms, the Bloom brothers, they got along with Lorraine a lot better than anybody else. And so Lorraine Williams, she quietly began purchasing shares from the partners, the Bloom brothers, who had grown disenchanted with Gygax. They'd grown disenchanted with gaming in general. And October 22nd, 1985, I was 10 years old. There was a board meeting that Gygax attended, believing he was still in charge. The board voted him out as president and CEO and handed control to Lorraine Williams. Gygax went into the meeting thinking, I'm in control of this company. This is great. But by the end of the meeting, he's not only not in control of the company, he's not in control of Dungeons & Dragons, and he never will be again for as long as he lives. All of his in-progress projects were immediately shelved. Lorraine Williams spent the rest of Gygax's life suing him for anything he tried to make, which, part of the reason why she's not especially liked. She jammed Buck Rogers into almost everything she could for TSR, including board games, video games, and role-playing games. And Lorraine is also the one that caused TSR to go bankrupt entirely by overproducing books that were sent to the book markets, who had the right at the time to send back any unsold product. And basically, TSR just made so many books and sent out to all these bookstores who were like, well, we can only sell X amount. We're sending the rest back, because that was the deal that they'd made. And it just screwed over the entire company and everybody who worked there until they were bought out by Wizards of the Coast. So there's that. That's the Night of Long Knives.
Yeah, and that takes us through, I think, first and second edition AD&D.
Yeah, I think second edition.
That was TSR also, right?
So that takes us through first edition and basic and advanced.
Yeah, A's first and second.
Well,
Wizards was third edition, right?
Yes, Wizards was third edition, but there's a second edition of advanced that happened under Lorraine's watch, I believe. But
starring Buck Rogers.
No, he was. she was able to be convinced to keep Buck Rogers out of it, frankly, which is
that would have saved TSR if they had put Buck Rogers on the front cover of D&D.
Should I talk a little bit about the Satanic Panic?
Yeah, we touched on this the other day, invoking a certain amazing products such as Dark Dungeons. We can. I think it's hard to talk about D&D's history without the Satanic Panic, because this was like how a lot of people learned about D&D to begin with, right? There was, especially in the South, a real fervor about this, a frenzied fear.
Well, this was created. This was a artificially manufactured panic. In August of 1979, this guy called James Dallas Egbert III. He's a 16-year-old gifted computer science student at Michigan State University. 16-year-old and in college. He's smart as hell, okay? But he vanished. And his family hired a private investigator named William Deere. And Deere latched on to the idea that Egbert was a D&D player and decided that this is why Egbert had vanished, and decided that Egbert had gone into the university's underground steam tunnels to act out the game in real life, because William Deere was a sensationalist and thought this was his ticket to fame. So
this of course became the plot of a Tom Hanks movie later on.
The steam tunnel incident, as it came to be known, was splashed across national media as a chilling story about a game so immersive it drove a boy insane. In reality, Egbert had gone to the tunnels because he was overdosing on Quaaludes, because he had a mental health crisis related to depression and drug addiction, probably because he was 16 years old and in college, where everyone was, a very different social environment. It was a very different social environment. D&D had literally nothing to do with it.
Quaaludes are a very hard drug, by the way. They're like a proper deliriant. You eat Quaaludes and then you shave your cat and try and teach it Spanish, and you don't remember doing that or why. So,
yeah. And this only gets worse when we bring in Patricia Pulling. Patricia Pulling blamed her son's 1982 suicide on D&D, and she founded an anti-D&D organization called Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons, or BAD. And she is the one that went out to PTAs, police organizations, and most especially the fundamentalist and evangelical Christian groups. And she accused the game of teaching children witchcraft and summoning demons and eroding the line between fantasy and reality. And this caught on like wildfire. What's his name? The 700 Club. What is that guy's name? I can't remember anyway. One of these famous televangelists picked up on it, and this created what came to be called the Satanic Panic. Of course, season 4 of Stranger Things gets into this a little bit as well. If you want to see like a more interesting look at it than just listening to me. I'd much rather watch Millie Bobby Brown when learning about D&D, frankly. So there's that. And as we talked about, this D&D sparked a revolution that went far beyond tabletop gaming. We have a whole episode on the influence of it, but the short version is almost every corner of modern entertainment was touched by D&D. The game's core concepts of experience points and leveling, character classes and hit points, inventory management, skill trees, these all became foundational architecture of video games. Baldur's Gate, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, countless others, they all built directly on the DNA of Dungeons & Dragons. The Smithsonian Institution, this is something I didn't have when we talked about the influence. The Smithsonian Institution has described D&D as the catalyst for a revolution in how humans play games. Not just tabletop games, but all games. I think that's amazing.
And I think it's fair to say. Like, we talked a lot about like the broad structural considerations that sprung from D&D, like the idea of creating a character, preserving this mechanical form of your guy and bringing that with you from game to game.
Exactly. So that initial print run of 1,000 copies of D&D was made on a $2,000 budget, sold out within a year, based purely on word of mouth because they had a $0 marketing budget. And after it was sold out, Gygax was like, okay, now I've got some money. I'm going to do, and that's when we got that. It really started to explode and build up, and people were just playing it everywhere. So.
Well, we've gotten to the post TSR era, which is sort of where the mechanics started to solidify in what we see now, right? Because we've not said this magic word yet, but I think it's hard to talk about the history of D&D without discussing it, because this, I think, is like the critical distinction between like old D&D and modern D&D. Fako.
Oh, Fako. which is an acronym, stands for 2-hit armor class 0. And this was a stat that basically told you what number you had to roll equal to or higher than to hit the target. I think
Yeah,
to hit a specific armor class, and then you had to modify that number based on whatever armor class you were facing. It was just overcomplicated.
it's really confusing. No one knows where it came from. It was like some kind of internal logic. Zero Thaco, which is 2-hit 0, was actually really good, but Thaco could also be negative, which is even better. But then high Thaco was high armor was bad and negative armor was good. And when you look at the chart, your brain explodes because like higher level characters had more, but the level 0 or halfling and human had less. And then I don't really understand Thaco.
Trust me, it was a challenge even for first and second edition players like myself. When third edition rolled around and got rid of that completely, we celebrated. We were like, woo, thank the gods. There were so many complex rules of first and second edition. There was a thing called a speed factor, and that modified your initiative based on what kind of weapon you had. In first and advanced edition, I think advanced D&D, there were modifiers based on what weapon you had versus what armor you were facing. It just got super complicated. And most people didn't use it. I'll be honest. Those modifiers we mostly just chucked, and we were like,
well,
you know
yeah, because how do you use that in practice when you have like 10 monsters and you've got like a party of 4? Like, oh my god,
it got complicated.
The D20 base on the other with AC as it stands to this day has been more or less the same from 3.0 onward. Like it shows up as is in games like KOTOR, which is pretty much just a game of D&D 3.0 played with Star Wars characters.
Yeah, KOTOR is, well, there was a D20 version there was a third edition, essentially, version of Star Wars. And that's what KOTOR was built on. And yeah, KOTOR is very much that. So I played that D20 version of Star Wars. It's not at all my favorite. But KOTOR is a damn fun game to play.
Oh, KOTOR is so good. Which also
as Carthanassi would say, pure Pazak.
Pure Pazak. Yeah, dude. The next time we're on a Discord call, I'm gonna jump scare you with my Pazak soundboard. I have a whole Pazak soundboard. I have all the win sounds and lose sounds.
Oh, that's so rad. That is so rad. Well, I've been talking for a while. Why don't you pick up, like, talk about, what do you want to talk about with regards to D&D? Because I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, we're moving into like the era of D&D where it sort of reinvented itself, right? Because the TSR era was, I think, the initial boom, which then had its initial bust when it sort of reached its capacity. Parents started cracking down on this stuff. And then Wizards buys it. And Wizards of the Coast, of course, is like one of the biggest like tabletop game publishers in the world. They're known primarily for like Magic the Gathering these days, I would say, which even then was like a huge deal. And there was a certain aesthetic that Wizards had and has that I think they carried over into 3.0, because suddenly Dungeons and Dragons was not just in the land of the imaginary. Suddenly it was like beautiful on the page. Like the 3.0 books had really, really nice binding. Like we're talking like no longer packets. These were hardcover folios that were meant to resemble arcane texts. And it did pretty friggin' well because Wizards had a marketing budget. Which is the thing that was like never part of the equation. Because remember, they were in debt like the whole way down after the incident. For a while, the company was flush. They produced too much, yada yada. But at some point after they got sold off, Wizards decided to go all in, and it worked because third edition and 3.5 produced an insane amount of books, and they sold. People were buying these. Like, and when I say marketing, I don't mean like just like ads and things. Like they understood how to sell books. Like my player's guide 2 right here On the back of the player's handbook too, which you can see. I'm holding it up right now. You can see it. It's right here.
I cannot see it.
You can see it.
Okay. I will picture it in my brain.
Make your characters the best they can be. Whether you're creating a new character or improving an existing one, the player's handbook too has something you need. You need this book, which you can see right here. They began to like really market this stuff. They made it seem thrilling. They were like placing it in conspicuous ways, and the books drew the eye. Like me as a tiny child, like baby Vera, -2 years old, wandering out alone late at night in the bookstore, the Badlands, the bookstore, role-playing game section. I see these gorgeous hardcover books, and I am drawn to them. And I started reading these. Like my poor parents had this strange little girl who was like reading these like stories about campaign settings, like reading monster manuals, like, could I buy this please, to never play the game? Like that's effective. I'm a victim of this. It shaped my little brain into whatever it is now.
-2 years old running around.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture that. But we got a Sarmelian Bloodweaver's got a super chat. Would you like to read it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarmelian. Shout outs to Eberron for being Warhammer Good Mirror. Oh, Eberron.
So, fun fact: Eberron was part of a marketing push from Wizards of the Coast at the time. They wanted a new campaign setting, and they created a contest for people to turn in their ideas, and the best idea overall would then become the new campaign setting, which was huge. I mean, everybody at the time who was a D&D fan was like, oh my God, this is my chance. I get to show off my cool home setting. And just, they had thousands of entries. Out of those, Eberron was the overall winner. The other one, there was a runner-up called Dawnforge that I worked on for Fantasy Flight Games, and that was really fun to work on one of the runner-ups. I can't remember what there was at least one of the runner-ups that I think got made or got published, but I'll be damned if I can remember what it is now. It's been 25 years at this point. The thing about, I guess I want to drift back to the Satanic Panic for just a minute.
Please.
The Satanic Panic, it's hard for me to explain just how popular this made the game. you would think the opposite, but it didn't. So D&D was banned by school districts, libraries, military installations. And go ahead.
There is nothing so cool as being illegal.
Precisely. This was a big draw. It was like everybody, because what would happen is you'd have your 700 Club guy or televangelist or PTA, whatever. They'd come out and tell you, don't play D&D, it's bad. And there was always somebody, why? What's this game about? And they would say, well, it's about pretending to be wizards and fighting demons and monsters. And like at least 50% of the kids would be like, well, that sounds pretty rad. I want to try this. One of the strangest cases involved the U.S. military. Concerns were raised that soldiers playing D&D might blur the lines between reality and fantasy. And this was one of the strangest fear. And this was actually even part of the Mazes and Monsters movie that Tom Hanks made. Is that you blur, you can't distinguish between reality and fiction, which is to me that's the most like insane thing. I don't know anybody I've ever gamed with who cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality.
This is sort of meta, but I think that represents sort of like the ultimate wish, though. Like when it's billed as like something that has such a potent grasp that it will literally blur the lines of reality in this psychedelic way, you're like, huh, could that be pretty cool? Maybe you're like, it represents this like absolution of form, right? And of course, there's no way that can actually happen. But if it's so compelling, people are threatening that, there's got to be something to it, right?
Mickey Stopwatch says, do you watch movies? Do you read books? And I was like, yeah, to me, that was exactly, I was like, it's the same thing. And the bands almost universally backfired because the controversy made D&D appear dangerous, edgy, and cool, which appealed exactly to the demographic who is most likely to want to play it, teenagers. Sales grew throughout the Satanic Panic years, not shrank. They expanded. They made more money. They sold more product, and the publicity arguably cemented D&D's cultural identity for the game as a game for smart, unconventional thinkers who existed outside the mainstream.
Yeah, like it's a hobby for nerds who wear entirely black.
or live in their mom's basement, which is the thing that for decades we always heard. God, so Dungeons and Dragons, it's the first one. It's I started playing it when I was 8 years old.
I don't know when I started collecting these books, but I remember like I was very young. I literally don't remember when I started. But I have like over however many years, I collected so many 3.5 source books. I would just read them. I would read through these and pour through them, and I was obsessed. And like that part of that is due to the way Wizards structured them. Because no hate to like the AD&D stuff, but the books are not beautiful. They are not like
God no
formatted nicely. And suddenly Wizards comes along and boom, they're sexy now. They've got a website. They've got a style guide. They've got like full color pages. It's a transformative thing. So that's like the new push, because after the panic, things like sales died down and so on. There was a lull, and this marketing push brings it right back in.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember what I did in my spare time before D&D, because whatever. I mean, I assume it was reading novels, because I know I was a reader at like age 5 or 6, and I was reading fantasy novels. But yeah, once D&D got into my world, that was it. That was what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to study. I read the red box is the first box of D&D that I ever got. It's the Larry Elmore cover, the Metzner edition, I believe is what it's called. And I loved it. It's got Larry Elmore art inside too, so it's got a Elmore cover and Elmore black and white on the inside, and it was just amazing. And it had an example of play that was like a little choose your own adventure style solo adventure in it, where you are tracking down a wizard named Bargle in the Caves of Chaos, and you meet this cleric who's she's a woman. She's beautiful. She's there to help you and heal you. And I was like, this is my girlfriend. I clearly this is the love of my life, right? And then Bargle kills her, and I was like, you son of a bitch.
And then you're hooked.
I felt like I've spent the rest of my life chasing that goddamn Bargle magic user who killed my cleric waifu.
I will say it's very funny to go back to like the white box books and like you see like topless drawings. Like he's like, there's a couple. It's salacious. It's salacious.
Palace of the Silver Princess was infamous for having that, and the original Monster Manual both had a considerable amount of bare breasts on display. So.
Your pastor would be very upset.
Lich Lord says, did you do any of the classic adventures? Well, I played Keep on the Borderlands for sure, and Ravenloft for sure.
Is that a Super Robot Wars avatar? Very cool.
Oh, for Lich Lord Cares?
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, that's Translor Z. That's Great Mazinger.
Mm-hmm. Strong.
Great Mazinger.
Sorry. Ooh.
Oh my god, don't get me started on giant robot anime, because I'm a big fan right here.
Well, we'll get there someday. We'll play Lancer or something.
There's a show called Giant Robo. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah. I know Giant Robo.
Okay, God, it's that final episode of Giant Robo is the most epic thing ever captured on film. I swear to God.
There's some good stuff out there.
Oh, it's Mazen Emperor G. Apologies. It looks like Great Mazinger. I apologize. Yeah. Okay.
I gotta reach out to an orbital dropkick still. Well, I'd love to do Lancer at some point. Like, I think it's just an interesting setting. It's a cool system. The history of it's kind of neat.
So, Vera, can you explain for me your first experience actually playing Dungeons and Dragons?
My first experience actually playing Dungeons and Dragons was, to be frank, terrible. I
Oh
was
no.
in, I want to say early high school, and I had been asking around for like the entire time I'd been there trying to scare up a game. And I heard finally some of the older kids were trying to play. And it was this loft, like in downtown DC, this brickstone house, which was very pretty. And we were let in, and there was no one home. We went to this kid's room with his bunk bed, and we sat around the like bottom bunk of the bed and set up a loose little paper thing and sat down to play. And nobody but me really wanted to play. And they were
Oh
screwing
no.
around, and they were on their DSs and like just shooting this shit, and no one had characters ready, and there was never a session 2. And we had to play like 1.5 round of combat, and I left really sour.
I am so sorry. That sucks. Wow.
And I kept trying. I had like one more or less failed game of Call of Cthulhu that I put together and ran a session of, and nobody came back for that because they just wanted to like play with the props that I'd prepared, and it was very frustrating for me. And
You made props? Do you know how rare that is? That is amazing that you made props.
I had like I was so excited. I gave him like a puzzle box, and I gave him like these like ominous little things, and I was trying to make it creepy. And they're like, "Oh, this was scary," but this was it was so annoying. And I wound up not getting to really play until I want to say like early college. How old were we? I would say like 13 or 14. So like
Wait,
not very old. Like
you,
maybe somewhere like 15, but not like
you
mature 15, right?
you went to college at 15?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is the Call of Cthulhu era. I when I was like first starting college, I think I played in my first like online game a little before that, and that was wonderful. I still play with that group regularly. We played Pathfinder, and there were a couple of us who were like really invested, a few who weren't, but I had a really great time. And I was invited from that game into a longer running group that was playing Dark Heresy, which I went on to play in for several years, and that became my fantasy group and has split into like various other groups that I am still a part of to this day. The Pokemon game that I am playing in right now is a run by the DM from that Pathfinder game. I also got to play in a 5e game at that time with some people from my college, and that was fun. I played on campus, and then it got weird, and I stopped playing that.
Mm.
But my first like proper tabletop experiences were around then. And, like before that, though, I was doing all sorts of things online. I was doing like Gaia Online, forum roleplay, like Barton Town stuff, and that kept me going because that was the literary exercise, the character creation, and I had that like from middle school onward. And I was looking to like replicate that with a group of people with dice, and just couldn't do it until. So a lot of my like best playing experiences have been in online groups. Not all of them, but at this point I've like gotten like I don't know like 10 or 11 campaigns down of like various different types of things from varying length. And
There is that sublime moment when you find people who are as excited about the thing you want to do as you are.
it took so long. It took like 10 years. It like seriously, I I want to cry thinking about it.
I am so sorry. Wow.
Well, I envy you were playing at age 8. Like that's amazing to me. I wish I could have found a group because like I tried. I had like the 3.5 edition starter set, and none of the neighborhood kids gave a damn. They just could not be bothered to like really invest in it. I was like so frustrated.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't think I really played until junior high. Like I was playing it, but you know, I was looking at it through the lens of the novels that I'd read, and I was trying to enforce a story structure. I was trying to so either we were doing like weird time travel shenanigans, like we had frost giants throwing grenades from Vietnam, you know, as like one of our encounters. If we weren't just screwing around, I was trying to be like, okay, so here's Lord Fowl's Bane, which is book 1 of the Thomas Covenant Chronicles, and let me tell you about the Blood Guard, let me tell you about the land, and everybody's like just tuning me out, like whatever, we're not here for that. So it's still junior high, and then I finally kind of ran into a guy who was like, listen, it's a game, you should play it like it's supposed to be from the book, stop trying to make it a novel. And thanks to that friend of mine, I was like, okay, let me refocus. Let me try a different approach. And treating it like the books tell you to play it really helped. Let me tell you what. And that we were also lucky because that was junior high for me would have been 1986, 7 ish, and there was a ton of games that were coming out. We had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we had Robotech, we had Rifts, we had the Star Wars role-playing game, the D6 version of that, we had Marvel superheroes. So for a fickle teenager, it was easy to play D&D for a while and then pick up Marvel superheroes, try that for a while, and then pick up Ninjas and Super Spies or something and try that for a while. So my group of friends, we were in it to win it, in that we wanted to try each of these games and we wanted to get the full experience. I credit the Star Wars one as well. I'm wearing that shirt today. Star Wars shirt to honor that. The D6 Star Wars game was like, make it feel like the movie, and it had a lot of advice on, as a DM, like you would describe transitioning scenes like a wipe across the screen, like Star Wars is famous for, where you just leave one scene and now you're in the next scene. And the book was chock full of really cool little propaganda posters or ads for Incom's new T-16 Starfighter, stuff like that. And it really was, it taught me a lot about immersion and verisimilitude, if you will. I said the word.
My favorite, perhaps. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that that sensibility of trying to make things feel a certain way, making them feel real, took a while to develop in the D&D space, right? Because again, this is an offshoot of wargaming, and the idea of having like themes in your characters, I think, was sort of solidified in 3rd edition.
Well, okay, I would argue 2nd edition tried this. So Forgotten Realms was one of the reasons why Forgotten Realms is so beloved, is that in second edition and in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, where it first appeared, it was Ed Greenwood was kind of the first guy who was like, no, I'm taking this world seriously. Like, what would a fantasy world be like? And he would talk about the politics of the Forgotten Realms. He would talk about how his great wizards, how they saw adventuring and adventurers as part of an ecosystem. And it was kind of groundbreaking for him to say this setting is a living thing, and it is a place where you can come adventure, but it's also a place where you can tell stories about your character, because these were his characters.
Because 1st edition was like very concerned with logistics. It was concerned with how many gold piles you find and how many hirelings that can buy and who inherits your money when you inevitably die and things of this nature. Like, there were a lot of internal consistency matters, but not like that, right?
So 2nd edition had these books that introduced a concept called kits. And kits were like a little add-on to your class. Like, I'm a fighter, cool, but I have the Cavalier kit, which means I am a knight and I have a horse and a lance and things like that, right? And that's where I would argue you're talking about the themes of the 3rd edition kind of solidified. I think that's where that started, was in those kits.
Yeah, because suddenly you're playing an archetype, and that archetype has a personality that is not fighterman or magic user.
Okay, I've got another controversial opinion I want to throw at you.
Please.
So 1st edition D&D and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, they both worked on this concept of the number of gold coins you acquired during your adventure was the equivalent. That was the XP that you gained for your character.
Yeah, and like getting more spells cost like exponentially more gold coins. Like, it was like 2,000 for 1, 4,000 for level 2, 8,000 for 3, etc.
Well, young Ross and young Ross's friends, we all thought that was stupid. We were like, why does getting gold equal XP? That's silly. You should get XP for doing things that adventurers do, like killing monsters. And third edition came along and said, yeah, it's not about the money. It's about, monsters have XP and you things, and a lot of other games at the time, like Palladium's games, also jumped on that bandwagon. But I think, and here's my controversial opinion, I actually think that was an amazing idea. That gold is your XP, because fighting monsters lends itself towards a very particular style of play. It's kind of the Gygaxian, if you will. I kick down the door, I fight the orc, I take the pie, right? Dungeon crawl. But if XP is actually gold, I think that actually fits a lot more of the source material, like the Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stuff, because that's why they go on adventures, is to gain gold. And when they get their gold, they spend it like rock stars, partying, ale and hookers at the local tavern. But the thing is that the secret sauce of that idea is that you could gain gold in any way you wanted. You could, if you want to go out and be a merchant or a craftsman, you could go do that and earn XP. If you wanted to be the world's greatest thief and your goal was not to fight people, but just to rob the vault, that's very in character. And I feel like it was just something we all dismissed out of hand, that I am now looking back and saying that was actually secretly very brilliant.
Yeah, because rewarding your players with XP for killing things brings on a whole slew of new problems, right? Especially with the other issues brought on by things like combat rating, right? Which is notoriously a little bit finicky. The idea that like gold equates directly to experience is interesting for me as somebody that's into cultivation fiction and so on, where oftentimes the capabilities of these characters are translated directly to how much they have in the way of resources, whether they have special artifacts or the monetary power to fuel those artifacts, which often draw on literally currency to activate their magical powers. So this idea of accruing great wealth is very much present in this like whole spectrum of Eastern fiction. In terms of like gameplay value, though, I think that oftentimes the milestone XP system is what I'm fond of. I think it functions quite well to dole things out based on vibes more so than any specific act, because some things like crafting, like maybe it's not fun to have someone make 72 pairs of tongs for the same reason it's not fun to have them kill boars in the starting zone for 3 months straight to fight he who has no life. Like, these are the issues, right?
Milestone XP or milestone leveling is my new favorite, and it is, I agree, it is, in my opinion, it's the superior way to level up, is to just check in with the group. If they feel like they've earned it, great, congratulations, you level up. It is a vibe check, but I find it to be by far more fun than the bookkeeping of keeping track of my XP and having to check the book and see how close we are. And there were so many issues that this bookkeeping issue caused. There was the infamous bag of rats concept, where the guy's like, I keep a bag of rats around so I can kill one if I'm 1 XP short. And there was the issue of like people not wanting to people wanting to genocide orc encampments because we can't let the little ones live, their XP. It was such a weird thing. I'm much happier with milestone.
I would argue this is the reason that milestone XP is superior. The core activity of a tabletop role-playing game is to tell a story, to build a narrative collaboratively, and milestone XP rewards you for doing exactly that. Instead of rewarding you for killing things or rewarding you for accruing gold, it rewards you for building a narrative, and that's in line with the core activity, right? The
Yes.
meta core activity.
100%. And yeah, it's better than the gold piece value equals XP. But I still think like that was a great idea. I just it's one of those things I look back on and go, why didn't I recognize how good an idea that was?
Well, it works really well in some settings. Like, again, there's this whole sphere of like cultivation fiction where these things are literally powered by money, right? Like, there's this game that functions a lot like RimWorld, amazing cultivation simulator, and it is RimWorld, if you're familiar with RimWorld, but with like Jean-Ja concepts. So you can smelt magic items into spirit stones and then use those spirit stones to power your character. And it works like that. And I think that's great. I think it's really cool. I think it would be really, really, really hard to run in a satisfying way on the tabletop, though, because the bookkeeping gets insane with that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. So we Magic the Gathering saved D&D. Because Magic the Gathering is where WotC got all the money to be able to purchase it, and they didn't even do the deal. It was a guy from Five Rings Publishing that like worked out the deal with Lorraine and then took it to Peter Atkinson over at Wizards of the Coast to make that happen. And Peter was a big D&D fan, so WotC's custodianship of D&D is such a great thing. They created third edition. They made amends with all the people that Lorraine had driven out of the industry. They brought back a lot of original creators, and they really invested heavily into making D&D a big thing again, and it was. The boom of the early 2000s is very difficult for me to understate, and honestly, that's where I started working professionally, was in the third edition boom.
Yeah, like third edition did a lot for the hobby. I think that having a really bold and cohesive aesthetic with these full color pages and the thematic resonance was a big deal, because like this was in D&D the beginning of captioned images in the guides. Like the Player's Handbook 2 has a drop kick. A monk is like delivering some holy justice on a werewolf, and the caption is warrior types, let it all hang out in combat. Like, this is meant to capture the imagination in some way, to stoke your ideas, what your character might be like. And placing primacy on that was a shift.
Of course, one of the biggest things they did was the open gaming license.
Yes, OGL.
This is a masterstroke that was followed by a catastrophe that we just barely avoided. So when Wizards of the Coast took over D&D, they created this thing called the Open Gaming License. This is 26 years ago, 2000, the year 2000. In the year 2000, they essentially open sourced D&D's mechanics so that any third-party creator could legally publish their own compatible content. Now, technically speaking, like you talk to copyright lawyers, and a lot of them will say, well, you could already do that, technically speaking. But the fact that the company was welcoming it was a big deal, and it transformed the industry overnight. People were just started. This is where Green Ronin as a company comes from. This is where Fantasy Flight Games as a company grew its role-playing side. A lot of game companies that exist today were born in this big boom of creating third-party content.
Because this is also the start of the internet era. Like, this is when websites were easy to use. People were able to go online, and not only are there companies making content, there's homebrew content that is available for everybody, and they're encouraging you to make it and giving you clear formats to make it.
Yeah, the OGL has some ties to the creation of Pathfinder. We should have a whole episode about Pathfinder someday, because it's fascinating. I'll just briefly say that Pathfinder began out of a company that was producing the Dragon and Dungeon magazines for a while, and they had a list of all those subscribers. So they were like, well, we can make our own version of D&D that is distinctly different from what WotC is developing, which would become 4th edition D&D, and we can market it directly to the most passionate people. That is the people who are getting the magazines. Is a brilliant masterstroke on their part. And the OGL, it spawned an entire ecosystem of third-party games, module settings, publishers, as we talked about. Anyway, it was big, really, really big. But then we come to January 2023, just 3 short years ago. And Hasbro nearly destroyed that entire legacy with one spectacularly bad decision.
The incident.
They leaked a draft of a new OGL that they called 1.1. And in this version, they were going to go after any third-party publisher that made over $750,000 a year and say, you have to pay us 25% of all your revenue as royalties. And then they said, any content that's created under the license for free is ours. No, sorry, any content created under the license is ours for free. We don't have to pay you anything. Without credit, without notification, we could just have it. And the backlash was swift and severe. There was a petition that gathered over 67,000 signatures, which I think is like rookie numbers. Oh, Vera, damn it! Every time those two numbers come up, I swear to God. So players,
I apologize. It'll happen again.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm an old man.
It will happen again.
You're allowed to make fun of me. The big thing was the people started canceling their D&D Beyond subscriptions, and the amount of cancellations was big. I don't know the number. I couldn't find the number, but I know it was big because Hasbro was like, oh, you know what? We're not doing that. And it was very poorly communicated, and it took them several tries to communicate clearly what they actually wanted to do. But everyone knew that they were intending to screw over literally everyone who is a third-party D&D creator. And let's just say trust in Hasbro is at a fairly low level amongst D&D enthusiasts.
Well, even in the wake of this, like, it's cost them quite a lot, right? Because Critical Role has stopped using D&D. They now know that they're going to go for the bag if things start going well, so they've begun to separate themselves from anything that Hasbro could poach from them. More competitors are coming out, like Draw Steel is going to be a thing soon. I think that was motivated partly by this.
There's so many. There's Black Flag, or what? Oh, sorry. Tales of the Valiant is the official name. Tales from the Valiant, Draw Steel, Critical Role's game Daggerheart. These were all reactions to this. Hasbro created many competitors to a $150 million a year brand that they were mismanaging at best. So, good job. I sincerely hope somebody got fired over this because it was a massive, massive problem.
Well, it's like a profoundly uncool thing to do, right? It's like, all right, we're not making enough money. Can we take it from people who are? Profoundly
anti-consumerist, yeah, 100%. That having been said, Dungeons & Dragons has persisted for so long because it's such a really strong property. It's been a television show, which I adored as a kid, by the way, the cartoon. It has been several comic book series, so many novels, several films. There's a whole story to tell about the D&D, the first D&D movie, which is crazy. There's films, books, audio dramas, and of course, Critical Role, which is by far the largest thing. And now we have several animated series from them about D&D indirectly. Technically speaking, Critical Role started out as a Pathfinder game. I don't know if you know that.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah. And then when they went on Geek and Sundry, they went D&D 5e. But it's fascinating. Dungeons & Dragons is it's fair to say it's my life. I have worked professionally in the industry for 26 years, and before that, it was whenever I was not working, and that's what I was thinking about, was either that or Warhammer. It was like the two things I was spending my time doing. Huge part of my life.
Yeah, like, it was my childhood, right? Like, again, I spent so much time with these books, and I went back into my closet because I've got these in storage now, these like racks of hardcover 3.5e books, and I found all of these dog-eared bookmarks I'd put in them, little sticky tapes and things. Like, I'd almost forgotten like how much I poured over these. Like, what do I have marked right here? Hang on. What page is this? Like I didn't think about this too much until we started setting up to do this, but man, oh my God. I opened to my bookmark in the Dungeon Master's guide for Core Rulebook 2 for the Shadow Dancer.
Oh, Shadow Dancers were cool. They were actually a kit. That was from a kit back in the day.
Well, I realized like one of my ins to Warhammer Fantasy was War Dancers and of course Shadow Dancers. So I'm realizing now that like some part of my professional career has a trajectory that started with me obsessing over a archetype in a book I never got to use to play a game I wanted to try when I was like 8 years old. And yeah.
D&D, I mean, we've talked about the influences of tabletop games in general, which is a whole episode we did, but D&D is specifically, it's the biggest, it's the strongest, it's the most historic, and it's the most well-known. Like if you go talk to people about Pathfinder, you go talk to people about Morkborg, like it's very likely that at some point you'll say, well, it's like D&D, but you know, because D&D is the epitome of, it's the pinnacle, if you will, of role-playing games. It's weird for me to say that. I'm not trying to see D&D is better than all other games, to be clear.
It is the vanilla ice cream.
It's the archetype. That's what I meant.
Yeah. It's the point of comparison. It is the thing you know.
Correct. And it's a touchstone, right? Games have come out that are far more rules advanced than Dungeons and Dragons. There are some games that have like so much more complexity than D&D, and there are games that are basically one sheet of rules or an index card even of rules, and that just goes to show the flexibility of the medium and the approach. But you know, D&D specifically, I think one of the things that's very appealing about it is that it's very core to what you imagine when you imagine fantasy, right? It's not only become that, right, but it's also it plays on a lot of those archetypes: wizards, men-at-arms, clerics, rogues. Those are by the way the 4 core classes that have been in every edition of D&D is fighter, wizard, rogue, cleric. And that is those archetypes, the ideas of a holy man or a wizard or a sorcerer, if you will, and a man who fights well with a sword, and a guy who is a thief. Those stretch all the way back to the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, when people were writing about fantasy. Robert E. Howard, when he's writing about Conan, you can see those same archetypes flowing throughout them. So D&D is a very good representation of essentially what fantasy is in a lot of ways, and that's why it's very accessible, you know. And someone who comes along can kind of be like, okay, if they've ever seen any media that has anything related to fantasy, especially Lord of the Rings, they can be like, cool, I know what I'm doing. I know what's up. I know the basics, and then the rest is just, you know, math rocks and improv theater.
Yeah, because it drew on the biggest inspirations in fantasy at the time, like Tolkien, Moorcock, and fused them into what then became the template for like everything else.
So we talked about the OGL crisis. We talked about the Satanic Panic. Very briefly, we should probably talk about 4th edition and how that changed things, because that's a big moment.
Yeah, because I guess we talk about like a 3.5 also, and just like what happened with rules and the complexity, because there's a reason I have like 30 3.5 books, right?
Yeah. Why don't you start with the 3.5? Because I want to hear your perspective on this.
My perspective on this is that at some point there was a shift at Wizards where they wanted to make the game balanced. They wanted to create a rule set that was as fair as possible, that scaled well, that was effective. And that led to 3.5, which is where I started like reading these books with the 3.5 releases, which were numerous, right? There were a lot of these books, and they were compatible to a great deal with 3.0 books, but there were numerous like rule changes and things, and it became the new edition for this stuff. And this new emphasis on balance accompanied the ability to patch things online. Because like in the 1.0 era and the TSR era, they couldn't go back and say, hey, here's errata. The idea of errata for books did not yet exist. And now we have like new prints and things. And the game became pretty complicated because with all of these additional releases for it, there were new classes and archetypes, new monsters, and new levels of complexity. If you've ever played Pathfinder, which is the cousin to 3.5, you will know that it is a pretty crunchy game. There's a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of subsystems and possible templates, and it became a behemoth. 3.5 is notoriously complicated, especially at higher levels of play. You can make characters that are quite broken. You can make a lot happen. It was updated and then built upon, and then it's sort of turned into like the Kowloon walled city of RPGs, where it's like built upon itself, and there's secret passages and things that are much more efficient than others, and it's kind of beautiful in its way. But oh my god, is it complicated!
So yeah, there was the controversy over 3.5 was whether or not it was necessary. Not everyone was convinced. One of the common criticisms is that Wizards was using the revision as an excuse to sell the 3 core rulebooks to an already invested player base. But well, the changes that were present were real, but they were modest enough that people were like, this doesn't feel like a whole new edition. And it was a lot of people in the hobby felt it was change for change's sake. However, that was before we really got to play with it. And once I played with it, I moved entirely over to 3.5, and everyone I knew moved over to 3.5. And I would argue that 3.5 is, in my opinion, the most beloved and heavily supported edition of D&D of all time. And that's a bold statement. I realize that's a bold statement. Even coming out of my mouth, I'm like, dear God, I can't believe I'm saying it. But it's roughly they produced almost a 1 book a month, sometimes 2 books a month during its lifespan. It created over 200 playable races, 52 base classes, and nearly 800 prestige classes.
There's just so much there. And like, if they hadn't gone back into the foundation for it, I think it would have been a little harder to confidently go and do all of that, because oh my God, is there so much support.
And that's at the end of 3.5 is when Wizards decided not to renew the license for Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine, which were being made by a company called Paizo. And they were like, well, we'll just make our own D&D because Hasbro was making 4th edition.
And then Pathfinder itself became like we'll get into that at some point, but it's similarly complicated. The level of crunch is more or less identical.
Well, for the purposes of this discussion, Pathfinder is 3.75. It's no, seriously, it is.
No, you're right.
It is so much. The DNA of 3.5 in Pathfinder First Edition is so strong that everybody was like, yeah, this is just 3.75, which was fine because 3.5 had been out for 5 years. And as I said, people they played a lot of it. I mean, even the guys who complained about it played a lot of it.
Yeah, like I would call the philosophy of like 3.5 and especially Pathfinder like maximalist design, where there are so many unique options that the game is kept rich by adding things that are entirely different from one another. You can introduce an NPC who uses this new prestige class and is like this villain using unique weapons and with spells you've never seen, their whole aesthetic. And every month you get a new set of things that are kind of like that. So you have a pool to draw from that keep things feeling like a giant world. It is expansive. Everything's kind of new, and there's new mechanical systems, and it was very complicated because of all this, but impressive.
The longest D&D campaigns I've ever played came from 3.0 and 3.5. So that's I went from first level to 17th level in 3.0, and I went from first level to I think 15th, like 2 or 3 times in 3.5. But the other thing when you talk about 3.5 is what the reaction that it caused in the industry. Like you were saying, it's complicated, right? And it spawned a school of thought where people were like, we want something that's a little more like a reinterpretation of original D&D. And this was a movement called the OSR, or the Old School Renaissance. Very briefly, it's a movement that tries to capture the style, feel vibes, if you will, and design philosophy of the early role-playing games from the 70s and 80s. The core elements of OSR is that it's rulings, not rules. OSR prioritizes more loose, minimalistic approach to rules with a strong emphasis on the DM's judgment. So the game master is encouraged to improvise rather than lean on intricate mechanics. One of the biggest problems here, one of the reasons why this was a big thing, is that 3.0 and 3.5 had infamously complicated rules for grappling and tripping and falling and standing up. If you remember those.
Flow charts, yay!
So the OSR was really aiming for simpler play, but also more deadly. The OSR, if you want to talk about TPKs, you can't talk about TPKs without talking about the OSR, because the OSR was like, absolutely, TPKs need to be on the table, bro. The OSR generally pushes players to emphasize caution, exploration, and clever problem solving over more heroic or cinematic play. Now, I am a fan of heroic and cinematic play. I also like the OSR. I like both of these things, so I just want to be clear. And another thing is it's more about an homage rather than a nostalgia. The OSR wasn't trying to literally rebuild 70s and 80s D&D. It was trying to reinterpret it with more modern design insights. And it's very popular, and there are things that come from it that I admire to this day, like Dungeon Crawl Classics. Arguably, Mark Borg is an OSR. Depends on how you look at it. Shadow Dark, which is something I really, really want to try. I have this book. I love it. I want to play it. Anyway, so that's the OSR. The OSR came out of the 3.0, 3.5 era, and that's why I wanted to mention it.
No, and you're right too, because it's definitely a return to that kind of form. Even MCDM is putting out a book that kind of aligns to the Soon Crows, which is going to be another dungeon crawly, very lethal kind of game.
Golden Chaos, I'm imagining you putting on your sunglasses. Yeah, Shadow Dark. So, yeah. So 3.0, 3.5, very, very popular, very generally well received. Did create some alternatives in the Osric. Now we get to 4th edition, and this is arguably one of the biggest missteps in a lot of ways. 4th edition was the first time where Pathfinder exceeded D&D in sales.
So Benjamin Fraser points out a sin of 3.5 that didn't fix the class balance of 3rd edition, where fighters and wizards had disparity, because fighters became a lot weaker than wizards at high levels, which I will note is consistent from the 1st edition of D&D, where it notes specifically the magic user will become very strong in the late game, but must get there first. So when it's no longer really, really, really easy for mages to die, although it still kind of was, like wizards had very low hit die, that starts to happen around like level 5 and never gets better. 4th edition's solution to this was to make them kind of similar, which had its own downsides.
Yeah, okay, so the thing you're talking about is a design issue called Linear Fighter Quadratic Wizard, which is a explanation of the growth pattern of both of these classes, whereas the fighter got to swing more often and maybe do a little extra damage, whereas the wizard was like, I am commanding the galaxy to rain down meteors on your head. Very different levels of play, and I have gone on record, and will go on record again, to say that that in 3rd edition and 3.5, a druid, the base druid class with no magic items and no prestige class at all, is ridiculously powerful. There's even there is a prestige class in Eberron that makes them just ludicrous, because they can turn into Ifrites and grant themselves wishes. Let's just leave that out of it. But yeah, the linear quadratic thing, druids were even more broken than that, and that's probably the biggest sin I think you're right, Benjamin Fraser. I think that is the biggest issue with 3.0 and 3.5 is that you might as well not play a fighter because the spellcasting classes were just so much more stronger. Now, fortunately, they did try to address this, and one of my favorite books for 3.5 is called The Book of Nine Swords, also hilariously known in memes as the Book of Weeaboo Fighting Magic. And it was a really fun way to give fighters more things to do and more abilities to cause significant damage at higher levels, which didn't quite make up the difference, but it did come close. And a lot of those ideas that they presented in Book of Nine Swords would go on to be incorporated in 4th edition. Why don't you talk about 4th edition, Vera?
4th edition was balanced in that it attempted to prioritize tactical play and to make each character have a role in the party and to have those roles be roughly equivalent in strength. So there were a lot of experiments with bloodying, for example, with the different health tiers that would affect the tactical balance of play, and to motivate a well-considered path to victory, wherein you had sharply defined responsibilities in the party and you fulfilled them, and everybody was roughly equivalent in power and stayed that way. I agreed it could have been great. I agree it has some real virtues. I think it's pretty cool. I am an enjoyer of tactical play in my games. I like to think things through carefully. I think that the problem that 4E ran into with this is that it wound up having a certain level of homogeneity because when every class is roughly equivalent, they feel kind of similar to play. Furthermore, to ensure this was the case, sort of took some liberties with how things felt, the verisimilitude of the setting, because it doesn't really it doesn't really make sense to me when my battle master yelling, just like shouting stuff, just has powerful magic effects. I don't know why that is. It's not flashy, but it's as strong as what the wizard is doing, because it has to be, or we'll be fair, but why is it like that? What's going on?
You nailed it. That class is called the Warlord in 4th edition. And
Warlord, yes.
Yeah, and he did heal people by yelling at them. And here's the thing about that: what killed a lot of my interest in 4th edition was the fact that, as you say, the verisimilitude. Why? What is in the world that supports this? And the designers did not think it was important for you to know this. They didn't care. It was just like it's an ability. It just works. Just go with it. And I was like, but why? But how? I have a fighter and I can swing my sword extra hard once a day for reasons that are unclear.
Yeah, like I'll note that another game I quite like, Fabula Ultima, does this also. There is a kind of shot caller class that's very similar to the Warlord, and then it can heal people and do things like giving orders. But the whole premise there is like, this is Final Fantasy. Everything is fancy magic. Don't worry about it, and it's ridiculous and over the top. And I mind it less there as opposed to something that has its roots in Tolkien and Moorcock and Sword and Sorcery.
There is a really fun anime called the Most Notorious Talker, and he's part of a talker class that does those things by boosting people by giving commands in combat. It's really good. I highly recommend it. Very neat as well.
I'm something of a notorious talker myself.
Oh, hey! I love it. 4th edition's problems weren't just in the lack of verisimilitude. Bill Slavicek, I know him. He's not like, I wouldn't say he's like a friend or anything, but I've spoken to him on numerous occasions, and he was the head of R&D for 4th edition, and he told me flat out this was an attempt to capture the appeal of MMOs like World of Warcraft. Yeah, exactly. Mickey Stopwatch. Wow, it's like magic. It's like it just pops up as soon as I said it. Mickey Stopwatch says it felt like they were taking a little too much influence from the popularity of online MMOs. Yes, because in 2008, when this game came out, World of Warcraft had 11 million players, which was huge. And so the design team leaned hard into grid-based combat, standardized powers for all classes, and the this was an issue for me because I like creative problem solving, and I felt like I was actively hurting my team if I didn't choose one of the 4 options in front of me for my abilities. But it goes beyond that. Like we spent a lot of time talking about the mechanics. The issues of 4th edition was not just mechanics. The first of all, the ad campaign that they came out with. Vera, do you remember the ad campaign for 4th edition?
I do not. I was very small in 2008.
So the ad campaign was very negative towards D&D players of earlier editions. It was like, get out of the basement and play a real game, was one of the things they said, for example. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, not great. The ad campaign was insulting. And then from a pure like retail side, they marketed all the books as like every book was a core book. If you went into a game store, you're like, okay, what do I need to play 4th edition? The guy behind the counter would be like, I don't know, I guess everything, because they were all core books for a while. And then they produced a secondary line that had some different mechanics, but it was called the Essentials line. And it was produced at the same exact time. So you could go into a game store and say, what do I need to play D&D? And the guy behind the counter is like, well, there's these core books, but over here is the Essentials. And you'd be like, well, which one do I need both? You know, what do I need to actually buy? So it was a marketing issue. It was a retail issue. It was a design issue. And all of these factors came together at the time where Pathfinder is offering you, hey, remember that 3.5 game you love? Here it is with a new coat of paint and a polish. Would you like to play this instead? And myself and a lot of other people who were really into 3.5 were like, yeah, we'll just go play Pathfinder. And this is the time. A nearly inconceivable turn of events. Pathfinder was outselling D&D, which is, as far as I'm aware, the one and only time where D&D wasn't the top selling product for tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, because Pathfinder also exploded online. Right? There was Archives of Nethys, which provided like all of the material for free. So you get into it, then like ask your mom to borrow her credit card to get you the books for real, and like this was huge.
Not for nothing. 4th edition comes out in 2008. By 2010, the entire design team had been fired from Wizards of the Coast.
Oof.
Yeah, big oof. Well, sorry, nearly the entire design team. I think like 1 or 2 guys stayed on. Skip Williams, maybe. So 4th edition was divisive, and it didn't help that the big announcement, the big event that D&D ran at Gen Con in 2009 was called the Sundering, and it was a Forgotten Realms event. And I remember laughing because I was like, well, is this about the split between people going to play Pathfinder, people playing 4th edition, or is it about something else? It was massive. I was actually working on Dark Heresy and Rogue Trader at the time. So I was deep in the industry. I was surrounded by industry people. I was able to talk to a lot of designers and other players like all the time. So this was an event that I felt very close to as a creator, as a player, and as a designer. And yeah, so Mickey Stopwatch points out, in hindsight, it's not a bad game. You're right, it's not, but it's far more suited to like a board game. Like Descent is a great board game that's like D&D. And if you made a game like Descent, or maybe, Hero Quest or Warhammer Quest, and just used D&D 4E mechanics, it would probably be a hell of a lot of fun. But it's just not really a role-playing game.
The issue with 4th edition is not only the role-playing aspect and lack of verisimilitude, but it's the build diversity and the way that the emphasis on balance and the limited choices did not cater to the market they had created already. Because I will say that in their effort to create a game that was based on some of the structures of MMOs, they created something that mimics the problems with MMOs. Because the most hated thing for an MMO player is when their class is the same as another class. If you're a Final Fantasy 14 player and you played Scholar, you're angry now. You're an angry critter. If you played Black Mage, you're mad now because your rotation got ruined. Because Final Fantasy XIV, as fights got more complicated, had to make classes more similar, had to make things function kind of like one another to allow for really flexible movement and emphasis mechanics. And as a result, everybody kind of does the same thing. And a lot of unique mechanics got gutted. And this is a bad thing. This is something that bothers MMO players. I know people who are like picketing still because they took all of Scholar's mechanics away. It's a whole issue.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I know I've ladled a lot of criticism at over 4th edition in this episode, and I want to be clear. Every edition of D&D has its strengths and weaknesses, and 4E's particular strength was it was extremely quick to get a new game going. It was a very fast, by the book to running your first game pipeline. And a lot of the mechanics that weren't necessarily my favorites, like the way that you could almost, the monster could kind of run its own. The monster entries had like a round by round of what they're going to do. And I felt that took like I had a bad reaction to that because I wanted to control the monsters. I'm the GM, that's what I do. But at the same time, like I can see the value in it for a new player, someone who's not familiar with D&D, and say, oh, okay, well, the monster does this on this round, the monster does this on that round. It was very quick. It was very speedy to get people to the table. And some of the mechanics obviously have persisted. Like the Battle Master is an evolution of the Warlord, and the Battle Master is one of the best fighter classes ever in 5th edition. But there is one other thing I need to mention about 4th edition that was not part of the mechanics, but also part of the dissatisfaction people had with it. And that was because it promised a virtual tabletop. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
It had an online subscription tool called D&D Insider, and it was supposed to include a virtual tabletop, but the tabletop came, the electronic tools only showed up at the very end. They showed up at 2010 when the line was basically dying, and it was barely functional when it did arrive. So yeah, that was another issue. When 4th edition first came along, this is actually when I got hired to work on Dark Heresy. It was the very same year, 2008. And initially I was approached by Fantasy Flight because they were like, hey, you worked on 3.5. Do you want to work on some 4th edition D&D? And I was like, hell yeah, I'll write for you. And then they came back a week later and like, actually, we just picked up the license for Dark Heresy. How about that instead? I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. But yeah, 4th edition D&D was almost my job. It was almost my job. I just want to point that out.
Very nearly. I will note that this is true. Like 4E had a lot of cool combat mechanics. It had a lot of smart things. Bloodying is smart. Evocative monster abilities are smart. The emphasis on balance allowed them to explore thematic kinds of behaviors for their creatures, and that's like a real virtue of it. This is a win. I think it's something that was carried forward into 5E as well. And there was some of this in 3.5. Like this idea is good.
Yeah, Istian Lion points out that Colville's talking about monsters. Yes. I love Matt Colville's description of how monsters should act in their his philosophy of that they need to have a reaction and they need to have an end of turn escalation ability. I love those things. I have tried to build them into my own designs because they were very inspiring.
Yeah, I think that 4E had like a good appreciation of like how action economy functions in practice, and that the way that you can degrade throughout a combat if you get injured sort of played into that. And there's a lot of wisdom there. Like I like that kind of tactical focus. I quite enjoy that as a priority. I want it to come with a lot of crunch. I want to put my hand in the pain box from Dune and read through 10,000 pages of concepts to find my build.
Yeah, and I did play 4E and I did enjoy it. So anybody that thinks I'm a 4E hater, it's not true. I have issues with it, and a lot of these issues are not necessarily with the game, but how it was sold. So there's that. But 4E is notable in that it almost killed the brand, and that's the reason why I thought it was important to talk about in the discussion of Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, 5E is the big revival. 5e is where we get Critical Role. 5e is where the game has been more popular than it has ever been in history, with that brief hiccup in 2023 over the OGL. But aside from that, and hey, we're my group is even talking about like I want to run another D&D campaign, and we're talking about using the 2024 rules for the first time.
Oh yeah,
and I'm excited because I like a lot of what I see as the evolution of 5e into the 2024 rules, which that's essentially, if you think about it, that's essentially a 5.5 edition.
Can I open up with what I think 5e's ultimate asset is, what I think their winning play is, their masterstroke?
Go for it.
5e is perhaps the most cohesive yet easiest to modify system ever made. 5e is spectacularly easy to homebrew for. 5e lets you take basically any concept and put it in the game.
Yeah, and it does it without the baggage of prestige classes. I designed a shitload of. So if you go back and look at Knights of the Dinner Table magazine from the late 2000s, I published a lot of homebrewed prestige classes because I liked prestige classes. It was a way to it was an evolution of kits, really. It was just like let's add this on. But prestige classes and the way they were implemented just led to bloat. It led to 800 different prestige classes, as we mentioned earlier, which is just far too freaking many, and it diluted what the base class was about. 5e was like, hey, the base class is where it's at, and then subclass adds on to it, which was a fantastic evolution of that prestige class idea. And like you said, it makes it to where it's so easy to homebrew. Yeah, it's a fun fact. I was very critical of the D&D brands going into 2014. I was very much the guy saying they need to do something big, and I don't think a new edition of the game is going to solve their problems. I didn't feel like that was going to be enough. And Mike Burles came along and was like, you're wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. And I have eaten humble pie ever since. Mike Burles, you were right. Sometimes the new edition of the game is exactly what you need, because 5e was the saving grace. And of course, I mean, you could argue that Critical Role came along and carried that torch pretty damn hard too. But it is my favorite edition of D&D is 5th edition.
Yeah, like the fact that my main complaint about 5th edition is that I see too much of it is perhaps its strongest endorsement, because like that means something's gone right. Yeah, like
that's my issue with it too. It's just too much of it. It's too much of a good thing.
Well, it's so easy to modify. People just use it for everything, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I'm guilty of this because I designed. I helped work on the Secret World for 5e. The Secret World it was an MMO, and now it's a 5th edition role-playing game, and I worked on that, which is amazing that 5th edition can do that. And I mean, going back to those days of 3.0 and 3.5, like you and I experienced, we saw a lot of people try to adapt D20 to everything. There was D20 World of Darkness books that Monty Cook worked on. There was D20 Elric, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, really?
There was, yeah, Stormbringer. Huh. I think it was called Stormbringer. And
to be sad.
let's just say that D20, which was the 3.0/3.5 engine, was not particularly well suited to other things than D&D, whereas 5e is. And you can see that with things like Everyday Heroes. You can see that with things like Esper Genesis, or you can see things like there's a ton of them. There's a lot of games that are basically built on the bones of 5e, and of course now we have it's undeniable that Daggerheart has 5th edition DNA in it. It's undeniable that Drawsteel and what's that other game, Tales of the Valiant, which is fine. I don't see an issue with that whatsoever. And one of the things that Hasbro did very well is they made 5th edition Creative Commons. So if you want to play 5th edition D&D for the rest of your life, you can do it legally It's the rules are always going to be there for you. So
yeah, like it's so flexible. There's a lot of good there. I think that the effort to build up a world within the narrative core books is also like a really strong play, like Vola's Guide to Monsters and so on. Just having these iconic characters who are then deployed in other media, like it works. It works.
yeah, 5th edition did redefine some of the campaign settings, and they definitely reprinted. They did their own versions, I should say, of Spelljammer and Forgotten Realms. They also introduced some new stuff based on Magic the Gathering, like what's that Magic School one called? That was yeah, Strixhaven, and there is one that is literally the Magic the Gathering world. I forget what that one's called. They expanded out 5th edition in terms of its campaign settings in some really interesting ways.
Yeah, like
I should point out, yeah, there's this guy. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
Sarmillion Bloodweaver brings up the Fire Mike Burles hashtag, and briefly, what that's about is that during the production of 5th edition, there were there's a couple of guys that are listed in the book. Zach S, who is Zach Sabbath or Zach Smith, and there's another guy who the RPG pundit, and these guys there are victims of harassment and abuse from these people, and Merle's kind of dismissed any kind of criticism about them and about their influence on the game, and apparently even passed on contact information of people who were complaining to Zach.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's not great. So to be clear, I admire his design work. That is what I admire, not necessarily the other stuff. So thanks for reminding me about that, buddy. I appreciate you.
This is a death of the author kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to overstate like how much 5th edition has taken over the scene, though. Like I think that everybody who plays tabletop games regularly can empathize with the struggle of finding a game that is not 5th edition.
or for me, the struggle is finding one that's open. Finding one with the table with an empty chair.
Also an issue.
Yeah.
We'll get you into a guest star in Pokemon. We have like guest episodes. We bring in a friend to be the trainer of the day.
Oh my god, you have a Pokemon 5e game?
Not 5e. We play in the Pokeroll engine, which is more close to like a White Wolf system, actually. It's quite interesting. I actually wanted to like invite one of their developers on to talk about it, but we'll see.
Cool. That would be cool. Yeah.
I love that system. It's a fan-made kind of thing. It's so cute.
Dragon Chew, I choose you. Dragon Chew uses fire breath. It's super effective.
So we're gonna teach Ross the rules of Pokemon first, but
like Dragon Chew is a fire type, so that means he's strong against water types, I think.
He's doing this on purpose, but it's working.
Listen, I've seen Detective Pikachu. I know a little bit. All right.
Oh, Detective Pikachu is great.
Ryan Reynolds saved that movie. I mean, he carried that movie on his back.
Well, he's one of my favorite actors. He's pretty strong. He's powerful.
Very powerful. I agree. What else should we talk about for D&D? Because we have come a long way. We've discussed a great deal of it. What's in the future, or what's
Sixie gonna look like? Other than like my friend Sixie who did my design. That's like a different. That's a person, not like an edition of the game. Anyway, what's 6th edition of D&D gonna look like?
That's a really good question. Hasbro has made exceptionally poor life choices, and it seems unlikely they will deviate from that course. So one possibility, the depressing possibility, is that they could go all in, as they threatened to do, with online tools and AI GMs, and require subscriptions to read all, to have a book and own a book and read a book. I'm hopeful that's not the case.
That would be the death of it.
I think it might be. Which I frankly I think everybody would just keep playing 5th edition, unless 6th edition is like a gold-plated book that you get for free. I don't see anybody playing shifting over unless it's really good. So I don't know.
Like they created something that is effectively the golden goose. It is so popular. It is caught on so strongly. I don't know how you iterate on that in a way that's meaningful.
The Exiled one. Oh, great question. If you had to pick a most memorable moment in a D&D session, what would it be? Oh, great one.
Ooh. Oh man. Does it have to be D&D?
Yeah, I think D&D's
so D&D specific. Okay.
It's the topic of the episode, so I think we have to go there.
I was playing a one-shot one time as a wonderful little kobold monk because I love playing martial kobolds because they're adorable. And this was the first time I had played in a tabletop game with a good friend of mine who is actually part of my Pokemon game, my regular tabletop group now. But she was a friend from my Gaia Online role-playing days. And it was her first time playing at a live table of any kind, I believe. And she was playing this absolute bastard who was like kind of a jerk the whole time. Cared a little bit, kind of a punk though. I believe he was a sorcerer of some variety. And we were crossing a tightrope. And it was being cut from behind, and he ushered my little kobold forward and tossed him, and then fell.
No.
And it was her first time playing at a live table, and she sacrificed her character, who died quite terribly. And I was like, wow, you have really taken to this. Like, it was impressive to me. Like, even in a one shot, I think that it takes a certain kind of like clear-mindedness to do that. It's stuck with me ever since. I've got like other like less positive, like strong memories from a D&D table, but I don't think that's quite the same idea.
So I'll pick an episode from a D&D campaign I ran just a few years ago, and we were in the Feywilds. And I was a GM, and my players are investigating a dragon lair. And I was really excited because this is a big moment when you're doing like the first dragon that the player characters are going to encounter. And it was a green dragon, who are famous for traps and illusions and sneaky business of many different kinds, you know. And there's 2 moments that I want to hit. The first was that the Green Dragon's lair was built in such a way that the only way in was you had to swim through a tunnel that like was a pond on one side, a pond on the other side, and a tunnel connected them, and you had to swim through it to get the other side because green dragons are aquatic. And because this was a particularly cunning green dragon, you know, the water was actually acidic. It was acid. It just looked clear. And my party players, they come to this pool, and they're like, oh, well, we can see the tunnel. We know it's clearly the only way to proceed. We're going to have to go in the water. And I don't know what was happening, but my whole group of players were like, well, hell, let's all just jump in together. They're like, well, we can like, and they started describing like what pose of diving that their character would be in when they entered the water. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh no. Oh no. So my entire group, they shucked off their armor. They got into position. They wiggled their butts and they jumped into the water as one. And I'm like, well, good news and bad news. The good news is you can easily swim through to the other side. The bad news is the water is actually acid, and you all sustain, you know, this much damage. And they were like, oh God, we should have seen this coming. Oh Lord.
Oh no.
They get out the other side. And then the second thing I want to mention about this fight that was so funny, green dragons breathe poison. That's their gas attack, their breath weapon. And in my party, we had a dwarven life cleric. Dwarves take half damage from poison, and that's a baseline. Like if they fail their saving throw, they take half damage from poison. Well, this guy was very good at his saving throws. So the dragon would fly around, blast everybody with his poison breath. The dwarf would take typically half of damage, like a quarter damage from the freaking blast. And then as a life cleric, he's just like, okay, everybody's healed. We're all back up. And I got so frustrated. Well, the dragon got very frustrated, I should say. Like I, as a GM, was enjoying it. But it was a very funny moment for the green dragon to be like, what the hell does it take to put down this damn party? Anyway, that's my memorable moment.
That's good fun. That's good fun. A little bit of weeping before they look, but hey, that's part of the journey sometimes.
It really is. It's astonishing what, again, we've talked about this before, like, well, where players will pick an NPC for no reason and just like latch onto them. And sometimes they'll come across an obstacle or a challenge and they'll approach it in a completely different way than you expect them to. They'll be reckless when they should be cautious, or they'll be super cautious when they should. It's not even an issue, or they'll come at it from a completely different approach. Like we're going to tunnel under it or something like that. And you'll have to figure it out on the fly.
Oh man.
Yeah. Litroy Kears, locked doors. This is the Critical Role parties. Famously, their arch enemy was locked doors. Which, if you watch the Vox Machina series, they do lampoon this quite a bit in the first season.
Yeah, doors are like an interesting game design conceit because I have this stuck in my brain from watching a lot of like the two best friends, like your super best friends, play like on YouTube as a kid. But they like a running gag, shit's locked. They run into a door in some game and it says locked. They remember that because a locked door you can come back to. A stuck door, that's a dead end. That's a blank spot on the map. But a locked door is intriguing. In a tabletop role-playing game, doors can be locked for a lot of reasons.
Well, a stuck door is just crying out for a crowbar, frankly.
Yeah, that's true. In a tabletop game, theoretically, there is no obstacle. Just try hard enough. Go for it. I smite the door.
I was actually, we were playing Star Wars just yesterday, and one of my players is GMing his own 5th edition game, and he looked at me yesterday and he said, how come you never told me how crazy paladins can be with their smite damage? And I was like, oh, I know exactly what's happening in your game. So you got somebody who's just smiting the hell out of everything. He's like, oh my god, the damage, the amount of damage this guy can do.
Let's talk alignment.
Oh, let's do, please. Yes, D&D.
Because alignment is a running concept that is sort of inspired by Ulrich, by Borkok, that runs through, I think, the entirety of D&D. And it's weird.
It is.
It's pretty weird.
So alignment started out in the early versions of D&D, which was basically there were only 3. There was lawful, chaotic, and good, and neutral. And you were somewhere on that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
They implied that chaotic was evil and lawful was good, but they didn't come out and say it until Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, where you had the 9. That it broke it from 3 into 9, because then you had lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. And they tried to define what these were. Now, alignment was something that spread, it metastasized, if you will, to other games like Palladium, where they have their own set of alignments. But the weird thing, the thing that always struck me that was weird about alignment is that it was static. They never wanted you to change. Once you picked your alignment, that was kind of it. And that, I mean, I think that's still true, even in 5th edition, that it's seen more as a static thing than something that can evolve and change over time.
Okay, my turn for a bold statement. Alignment is not only the worst thing in D&D, it is the worst thing in tabletop games. I hate it.
I am compelled to agree with you.
I think it is impossible to really define in a way that's satisfying. I think it is nothing more than a lens into super complicated ethical discussions like this one. It is a gameplay mechanic on top of that that can be very important, because the arbitrary good or evil descriptor determines whether or not your paladin turns something into ash when you smack them with your sword. It affects spells like detect evil and detect good that are very gamey. I think it only belongs in a super dungeon crawl environment where the ethical consideration is, do I share my gold chest I found with the rest of the party?
Alignment has caused so many more problems than it has ever solved. Alignment has been the source of ludicrous amounts of arguments at my table, usually from the game master trying to impose his view of what it is on you, and that whether or not you are fitting within that narrow niche that he or they see, or it's player characters choosing chaotic neutral so they don't have to worry about it, or and this was before 5th edition. Your alignment actually determined a lot of mechanics, whether or not a paladin could detect evil, whether or not protection from evil worked against you, or protection from good, or protection from chaos. I'm not going to say it was useless, and I'm not going to say it never added anything to the experience, but I will say that the majority of things that it impacted in the game, it impacted negatively.
Yeah, like it's so strange to gamify and hard distinguish really nebulous ethical discussion into the nature of morality in a game about like beating up skeletons. Like it's well, the second you engage with it on any level beyond like, I am a hero, so I am good, it makes no fucking sense, and you're confused, and it makes the game hard to play, and it's a whole can of worms that gets opened up suddenly and sprawls over the table, and then you're arguing about goblin children and might makes right and what is law and who makes the law. And
yeah, we're not here for philosophy. We're here to, like, do adventuring. It's just the thing that always bugged me about it the most was that it didn't allow for character development. It never allowed for you to start out one way and end up a different way, which is the core of a story, the core of a character's journey.
yeah, because it implies like absolutism, like because it's true, there are settings that have outer planes that align to these things. Like you're like cosmically tied to some outer plane by virtue of being really nice all the time. Or are you? Because was it, I don't know. Or are you like tied to Axiom because you're so good at doing your taxes? Who knows? It's really obtuse. Like it's the kind of thing that falls apart under scrutiny in a way that I think is like anti-gaming.
Thank you for bringing it up. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is probably the biggest weakness of D&D. It is probably the most egregious error that the game commits.
But it's committed to it. Like they because it's so archetypal. It's so associated with D&D. I would say it is one of the most enduring and most memorable mechanics of the system.
Unfortunately, yes.
And it's the worst handled.
Well, 5th edition has improved on it. A lot of so one of the things that 5th edition does that really I appreciated was that all of the mechanical effects, detect evil or smite evil or protection from evil, those were changed to be fiends and undead and demons, like specific types of creatures, which removed the morality aspect and instead just made it a blanket, it felt real. It felt like it was still a thing, but it was less about your philosophy and your ideology.
Well, because before it felt like the philosophy was this absolute inherent element of who you are, similar to whether or not you're a fiend or whether or not you're an outsider.
Yeah, Golden Chaos points out that 5th edition improved on it by making it largely flavor. You're right.
I don't like it as flavor either, because I think a lot of people would describe themselves as a pretty good chap.
I mean, again, I feel like they did it well with again, how the Paladin's detect works now is I like that. That feels right to me, even though it's not alignment based. But yeah, God, alignment just sucks. God damn it. It just sucks.
What's a better way of doing alignment?
I honestly, I think it is just flavor, or you tie the mechanics to specific types of creatures, or yeah, I don't. D&D should not be about philosophy class. It should not be about. I like that alignment has made me think more deeply about ethics and morality. I like that part. Okay,
But like, if
but I
it's gonna
don't
do
like.
that,
Yeah.
if D&D is gonna be philosophy class, it shouldn't be the mechanic, right? Like,
Right.
I shouldn't have to convince you that this is a morally good action in the middle of the game.
The best thing that alignment did is it has an excellent joke in the Order of the Stick, where one of the characters he carries around a 1-inch thick lead sheet because he doesn't want anybody determining whether he's evil or not. And I that makes me laugh every time they bring that one up. Yeah, and it created so many arguments, and this is why paladins were outright banned at certain tables and things like that. The impact of alignment on the game, negatively, I should say, is just it's staggering.
No, it's bad for so many things. Like, it takes all of the guesswork out of certain nuanced situations. It ruins certain kinds of interparty conflict. Like, there's so many things that blah, 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 blah.
No, I'm with you on that. And unfortunately, as I said, it metastasized. There are so many games where that, maybe not necessarily the alignment system, but just elements of it have made their way into games. Even one of my favorite games, which is Champions, had they separated damage that killed people into a different category than just like punching people or energy blasts. And I was like, why? What makes that special? Because it kills people, because that's a moral judgment about comic books, about superheroes. Like, I don't know. It's so awkward to be in the midst of your cool story about, saving the world from aliens. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but you used a killing attack. That makes you bad.
There is like a whole like open palm versus closed fist dichotomy, which I don't hate, but
I mean, listen, Captain America is a soldier in World War II. Of course he killed Nazis. Of course he did. That was his job, right? Like, but everybody goes crazy over Batman if he kills a guy, or Superman if he kills a guy. And I'm like, sometimes it's the only way out. Like, I don't know. It's morality in genre fiction sometimes can be a very confusing place. And I blame a lot of this on alignments.
Well, the argument with Batman is that he's less moral because he doesn't kill anybody.
Oh, well, especially with the revolving door that Arkham turned into. I mean, the I have one rule was a cool story at a certain point, but after a while it becomes a joke and it becomes a meme, and then it becomes, like you say, a liability. It's like now that's actually a bad thing.
If you kill a killer, there's the same number of killers remaining in the world, even though there are 32 of them and they're all mass murderers who blow up hospitals and eat babies. Like,
right. I mean, yeah. So, oh God, just, yeah, alignment. And then the way alignment was connected to specifically clerics and paladins, because if you wanted to be connected to a particular god in the setting, right, that often required you to have a certain alignment.
Yeah, and it's not even their tenets, because like Warhammer, we do tenets, right? For 4th edition, there are certain characteristics, certain things you have to do to be in line with that deity. Like whenever X, Y, be nice to dwarfs, don't stab people, like things that are actions, right?
Yeah. And okay, so really quick here, Mickey Stopwatch says, might as well blame DC Comics for that. Okay, yeah, DC does bear the blame, but in our episode about influences of D&D or influences of RPGs, I feel like that is absolutely, there's tabletop DNA or tabletop RPG DNA on that decision for Batman's one rule. At least I feel that way. I don't know if I could back that up with facts, but that's how I feel.
Well, it's important to remember that, like, at some point, everything we love started being made by tabletop nerds. Like around the 3.0 edition, the teenagers who were playing like first and second edition started to have buying power, and then like further and further. I could go on and on about like issues with the comic industry in the States though, because it's rough.
Oh, well,
There's other issues like in China and Japan and Korea. Don't get me wrong. There's also problems there, but they're different problems.
well, manga started eating the lunch of American comic readers in about that time too. So, oh my God, the manga explosion and how much that destroyed. Well, not destroyed. How much it took over the comic book industry. We could do a whole episode on that if we want to, but that's not really role playing, unfortunately. But
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, just trying to apply alignment to fictional characters like Batman, like Superman, can create and have created hours-long arguments.
Yeah, it's one of those frameworks that gets tossed around everywhere. Like it's so essential to how people think about Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
I'd argue it's not essential. Like I feel like that if 6th edition was going to do something bold to get rid of alignment, I think that would actually be a step forward.
Oh, it sure would be. It's how people think about it though. Like that, it's like one of the first things. Like anything D&D based is like alignment is part of it, right?
Mm. So that's why I'm really glad you brought it up, because I was like, yeah, that's a good point. We've been praising D&D a lot. Let's talk about one of its concerns.
Let's talk the problem. But like waffleness too, because to be a monk, you gotta be waffle, right?
Yeah, or at one point, Rangers had to be chaotic, I think.
Oh my God, why?
Yeah, it was just, there was some strange decisions, and it's I don't know. What are the things, like I have a recurring dream of time traveling back to like 1974 and running a game of D&D 5th edition for Artisan and Gygax and just trying to influence the whole growth of the hobby from there.
You think it would have blown their minds and you have to like sit down and make bonds with the other characters? Like what?
Yeah, bonds, ideals, flaws, right? Like just advantage, disadvantage, because that's such a great mechanic.
Oh, it's fantastic. One of my favorite like replacements for this kind of thing was an Eclipse phase, actually, where your character has motivations that can be positive or negative.
Oh, we need to do an episode on Eclipse phase, because you're a huge fan of it. I like it. I've never played it, but I like it.
Yeah, we could like I'll do some like dev reaching out this week. I'm finally like out from my mountain of fucking work over the winter zone, so I'll see what I can do.
Oh, that reminds me. I actually I know Adam Jury. I could reach out to him about Eclipse phase.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, great.
Yeah, for sure. I will reach out to him, because Eclipse phase is super cool.
That could be a fun one shot too. We've been discussing possibly spinning up some one shots for the Lorebeards and role playing thing, and using those to pair with discussion of the game itself.
Oh, one other thing we should talk about D&D is shared experiences, because in the early days there were adventures like Temple of Elemental Evil is one of them. Ravenloft is another one. And the Tomb of Horrors, of course, is the most infamous one. But these were shared experiences. You could go to any gathering of gamers, D&D gamers, and you could say, hey, did you play through, Tomb of Horrors? Did you play through Temple of Elemental Evil? And almost everybody had a different story. And it was one of those really cool community building things where you would show up at a convention and just hear 50 different stories about how people jump through the demon mouth or something like that.
Well, even to this day, you have like Curse of Strahd that kind of endures like that.
Yeah, Curse of Strahd. Good one, yeah. More modern example.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, where these legendary adventures have of an avenue through which to compare experiences. Like Rudy in Warhammer 4th edition fantasy. Rudy Klumpenklung, the absolute bastard, is a NPC who notoriously is very friendly, and parties have all sorts of encounters with him and like to discuss some of the Warhammer fan spaces, right? So I think D&D and setting up this archetype of adventures really does a lot to deepen the hobby, because when you can compare your experiences that are very personal and very creative and very varied, it's cool.
Yeah, Golden Chaos is bringing up a whole bunch of classic adventures that were like that. Keep on the Borderlands is another really good one, which Goodman Games did a 5th edition big book version of Keep on the Borderlands, which I'm really curious. I need to read that one because I want to run my players through. I want to run my players through Terror from the Underdeep, which is a big box set that is basically against the giants from the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons series, but it's now up to 5th edition, and Goodman Games does a lot of really cool OSR style improvements to it, and I want to run them through that, but they need to be 8th level, so we might do Keep on the Borderlands first, or Undermountain or something like that. Undermountain was another big one for the 90s.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, there's a lot of classic adventures. Like when you say classic, it's things that other people have played and many groups have worked their way through. And not for nothing, D&D has its own cast of highlighted NPCs. I would say Vecna is a great example of this.
Yes.
Showed up at Critical Role, showed up in Stranger Things, showed up in many products, including
Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, including Ravenloft. Like he was briefly trapped in Ravenloft. And there's other characters. Lord Soth in the 90s. Lord Soth was the man. If you went to any gaming convention, you were talking to people, you say, "Hey, did you read that book about Lord Soth?" They'd be like, "Hell yeah, brother." Lord Soth, who was a very famous Death Knight from the Dragonlance trilogy. Not trilogy, Dragonlance series. Lady of Pain, yeah, good example. Call out from Cermelian Bloodweaver. Lady of Pain from from Planescape. There we go. Yes, she's also a really great character. And of course, nowadays we have Tasha, Drizzt, Minsk, and Boo. Oh, Drizzt was there's a divisive character for you.
The birth of an archetype, the most imitated character.
Yes. Oh my God. They even imitated him in the community D&D episode.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
Ken Jeong, and he's like, I feel like I'm being racist right now.
Yes, the drow.
Yes. Oh, the drow in general. Oh my God.
Isn't there going to be a new Drizzt game soonish? I remember that at TGA there was an announcement of something related.
Other issues that D&D has had in the past. So in the early days, it was very simulationist. Almost all the games wanted to try and be a reflection of real life, and they tried to mechanicize. They tried to stat out just about everything, and this led to some issues where if you were playing a woman in some editions of D&D, you had less strength, for example. Not great, obviously.
Literally a mechanic in Fatal.
Right? Oh, Jesus, Fatal. Cursed Games. We're going to do an episode on Cursed Games, and we're going to talk about Fatal in that episode.
Oh, boy.
Woo! Get ready. Buckle up, everybody. That's going to be fun. But yeah, D&D had its issues with sexism as far as mechanical things as well. It had its issues with... Well, what are some one you could think of, Vera, that were problems of D&D?
Like mechanical problems? Like, I mean, I think that there's a ton of stuff in the like initial books of the white box stuff that's just like properly boring. As cute as it is to have like inheritances and stuff, I think very few tables were worried about the logistics of how many months it would take for a porter to return the estate to the next of kin who was their next character. Like the simulationism oftentimes would exit the bounds of what's like fun and interesting, right?
Okay, well, agreed. The Knights of the Dinner Table comic does a really good example of skewering a lot of these bizarre mechanics, because the characters in that the players in that comic, they are part of a long-running D&D type game, and the idea of having proteges that you must occasionally check in on and allocate funds to accelerate their training. Oh, training! You used to have to spend time and money to train your character to level up. It wasn't just an automatic thing. And like things like honor systems and like personal honor. That was a thing that came out of the Oriental Adventures book. Was a thing back in the
Better
day.
than a lawful alignment.
Better than a lawful alignment, agreed, but still weird. And just the sheer amount of modifiers and things that were kind of bizarre. They also lampooned that in the Knights of the Dinner Table comic, like, you know, hey, we get a bonus to intimidate this guy if we apply a torch to his groin, for example. You know?
Wow, cool.
Right? And I was like, okay, you know, but it's a very funny comic, and I do highly recommend it for anybody who wants to see some great D&D humor.
Yeah, like I'm a crunch enjoyer, but I think there were a lot of systems that were fleshed out very deeply in one direction that would be very hard to make use of. Like for like the White Box first edition stuff, like assumed you had like a ton of porters because they also assume you're going to be carrying back mountains of gold coins. You in fact literally needed over 10,000 gold coins to learn new spells beyond second level. So you better have porters with wheelbarrows.
Yeah, hirelings and followers. And again, Knights of the Dinner Table, there's some very funny things about, like, how do you determine whether it's a hireling that you want to hire or not? You know, things like that. And the consequences of treating your hirelings poorly. There's a whole storyline in Knights of the Dinner Table where they basically take a bunch of hirelings and stash them temporarily in a bag of holding and then forget about them.
Oh, God.
And that is a hilarious story about what happens. So, yeah, those were the days. Oh, and there were some really weird, bizarre magic items. Remember the Sphere of Annihilation, or the there was a universal solvent. It's really strange. Like and the machine of Lum the Mad, which is basically a submarine with crab claws. It's so strange.
Awesome. Like a weird science Johnny Test machine.
Agreed. I mean, it can be very cool, but it's also just really weird. There's that goddess, Blibdul Ploop, from she's the goddess of the sea. I want to say she's the goddess of like the Kuatoa. Maybe just such a weird ass name. Oh, the original deities and demigods. We could talk about that because it had the Cthulhu mythos in it, and it had something else. They had to get sued to take all that stuff out. And then they gave the gods stats, so you could literally.
Oh, like, yeah, like Tiamat's like armor class. That was a thing. That was a thing.
Yeah, the GM could be like, well, Thor shows up to smite you, and everybody be like, cool, we attack. This he had hit points in an armor class. And
the iconic Tarask, the biblical figure.
Oh yeah, we Fishman mentioned. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, we got there. Let's go.
Well, Sahuagin were mentioned early on in the episode too, so there you go. Sahuagin. Oh, the monsters. Like, there's some very iconic monsters. Beholders.
Oh yeah.
For one, mind flayers for another. The
gelatinous cubes present in the White Box.
Yeah,
all the way back. All the way back.
Oh, gelatinous cubes. God damn.
From first edition.
Right? Yeah, oozes and slimes. That's where all that stuff comes from. Oh man.
And it's everywhere. Kobolds and so on. Like we talked
owlbears.
Yeah, owlbears. Like, as silly as some of this stuff is, it's fun to talk about it. And frankly, even back in the day, I'm sure there were tables that got a laugh out of some of the complexities, like, and decided to write them off and do their own homebrewing, which is in a lot of ways the birth of the hobby, because people who were playing these games thinking this is silly, cross this out, let's do it this way, went on to become game developers. They wanted to become writers.
Yeah, Charles Stross is a very well-known science fiction fantasy author who's written a whole bunch of books. The series that he's most well known for is called The Laundry, if you're familiar with the Laundry books. And Charles Stross is the creator of the Gith Zerai and the Gith Yankee, among other D&D monsters from his days as a youth. So yeah, you can find a lot of cross-pollination between those things. Obviously, we talked about all the celebrities in our influences episode that are a big part of it.
Shout outs to Vin Diesel.
You know what? That guy loves his character, and I admire it. I admire loving the character that much, because
I'm gonna cold call Vin Diesel.
Do it. Do it.
We're gonna get Vin Diesel on for the 420 episode.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing? That would be really good. Oh, Joe Manganiello, yeah, that would be even better.
Yes.
Because I would spend the whole time talking to him about One Piece, but nevertheless.
Hey, could do worse.
He's got a line of clothing. Actually, he's got a line of D&D clothing that he sells.
Joe Manganiello's.
Yeah, Manganiello. Yeah,
Joe Manganiello's for the clothing line.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going.
Thank you. I got one in.
A man of culture, says Golden Chaos, who has a One Piece avatar there. Yeah. This has been a great discussion on D&D, but I think it's like an iceberg. There's so much more to talk about, but we've covered the broad points pretty well.
I would say so, but between this and like the broad influence, I think we've kind of gotten there. I believe our plan for next week is to make an adventuring party in D&D. However,
yes, we are. We're going to make characters next week, and Vera has a really cool idea.
We're going to make a 5-man band, a 5-character party, except one character will be from each edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
We're going to see what we get.
We're going to do a multi-edition party of D&D characters, and I think it's going to be super fun. Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
So please look forward to that. We're going to learn a lot about how character creation is evolved, and we're going to look at what that party is like at the end. So please enjoy it. We'll see you then.
Yeah, is first edition for you? Is that basic? Because
that's white box. That's like OG.
Well, no, because basic is a different. Believe it or not, basic is a different rule set than
before white box. Okay, we'll look.
No, it's not. It's not before, but it's distinctly different. Basic.
We'll plot this out. We got some planning to do because
yeah,
believe it or not, this is going to get a little complicated.
just a little. Oh my gosh. I need to go research and see if there's some online character builders that would help us make this a little faster.
For first edition, I don't know about that. We'll find out though.
Yeah, that's why I was saying maybe do basic instead of first. But nevertheless, thank you guys so much for joining us today to talk about D&D. You can catch us every Monday at 2:00 Mountain Time. And if you like what we're doing here on Lorebeards and Roleplaying, please do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button so that the algorithm will extend the D20s to more people so that we can roll dice with more of you lovely people.
Yeah, leave comments in the VOD, post things in the YouTube zone. You can as soon as this goes down, you can go over to YouTube and say, wow, epic for the win, Lorebeards and Roleplaying +2, all of these things. And you can find both myself and Ross over on Twitch.
That's true. My first Twitch stream is tomorrow night, Tuesday night. I know, shocking. I'm gonna do just chatting. So come join me if you want to ask me questions or watch me play some Sniper Elite.
Hell yeah!
Everybody, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. See y'all then. Bye bye.